Deep in the heart of Louisiana, the swamps are alive with whispers. Mist curls around twisted cypress trees, and the murky waters conceal more than alligators. Travelers report shadows that move against the wind, eyes that gleam in the darkness, and footsteps that follow when no one is behind. Some who dare enter never return, leaving only tales of fear and the faint echo of a scream. Tonight, we journey through the most haunted swamp trails in Louisiana, where shadow figures roam and the night never feels safe. Greetings, brave souls. Louisiana's swamps are more than a home for wildlife. From dark waters to overgrown trails, these haunted paths have long been a place of legend and terror. People speak of figures that vanish when approached, whispers that freeze the blood, and a sense of being watched even when utterly alone. In these swamps, time slows, shadows lengthen, and the past seems to reach out from the depths. As we explore these 25 haunted swamp trails, keep your lanterns close and your senses sharper. Some trails are not meant to be crossed at night, and some shadows never rest. Before we begin, consider this: if you could walk one of these trails, would you dare do it alone, knowing something might be following you? The Bayou de Ombres stretches in twisted channels beneath a sky heavy with mist. The water is dark and still, reflecting the gnarled branches of cypress trees that rise like skeletal sentinels from the swamp. A thick fog clings to the surface, rolling in from the edges of the marsh and drifting silently through the tangled undergrowth. The air is thick and humid, carrying the faint scent of decay and damp earth. Every step into this marsh feels like entering a world removed from time, where shadows lengthen unnaturally and sound is swallowed by the dense air. Visitors to the bayou often speak of a presence, a dark figure that moves with deliberate slowness just beneath the fog. Its form is shadowed, almost blending with the water and vegetation, yet there is something in its posture, the way it wades, that sets it apart from the natural movements of the swamp. Eyes, red and glinting, are said to pierce through the mist, tracking anyone who dares to step near. Yet when approached, the figure vanishes, as if the swamp itself refuses to let it be caught. Retreating into the fog and leaving only ripples in the water as evidence of its passage. The cypress knees rise from the stagnant waters like jagged teeth. And the swamp is alive with the quiet movements of unseen creatures. Frogs call sporadically, insects buzz faintly in the thick air, and the occasional splash suggests fish or something larger moving beneath the surface. But all these natural sounds are overlaid with something else, a subtle tension that makes the hair on the back of the neck rise. Footsteps seem to echo where no path exists, and whispers drift in the wind, carried from unknown sources. The mist swirls, sometimes dense enough to obscure everything beyond a few feet, and in these moments, the swamp feels infinite and inescapable. Locals tell of the bayou's strange history. Stories speak of disappearances, of travelers who entered and were never seen again. Some claim the waters themselves are cursed, carrying memories and echoes of the past. Others insist the dark figure is a guardian of the swamp, bound to the water and fog, neither wholly malevolent nor benign. Those who have spent time at the edges report a profound unease, a sensation of being watched even when no eyes are visible. The combination of silence, shadows, and shifting fog creates a living labyrinth where the ordinary rules of perception seem suspended. Night deepens the mystery. The mist thickens and spreads across the water like a veil, diffusing the moonlight into a pale, cold glow. Sounds become muted, swallowed by the vast expanse of darkness. The red eyes appear more vivid against the monochrome landscape, moving slowly, deliberately, and yet always out of reach. Visitors recount that time seems distorted in these moments, minutes stretching into hours and footsteps taking longer than they should. The swamp appears to breathe, inhaling and exhaling with a rhythm that feels alive. The figure follows silently, unseen but palpably present. Every path through the Bayou de Ombres is unique. The channels twist unpredictably. And landmarks appear different with every turn. Trees bend over the water in unnatural arcs. their moss-draped branches creating shadows that look like reaching hands. The ground is soft and treacherous, making progress slow and deliberate, while the air grows colder in spots where no wind should reach. Travelers report the sensation of being drawn toward certain areas, pulled as though the swamp itself guides them to its hidden depths. The red-eyed figure seems to appear most often along these unnatural corridors, gliding silently through water and fog, never breaking the rhythm of its haunting presence. Those brave enough to linger often notice small details that heighten the sense of otherworldliness. Ripples in the water appear without cause, leaves fall silently from trees in otherwise still air, and shadows twist without a source. Sometimes the mist thickens and thins in pulses, revealing shapes for brief seconds before dissolving into nothing. Each glimpse of the dark figure leaves a lasting impression, a reminder that the bayou is not entirely of this world. Even those who leave the swamp report lingering sensations, feeling watched in ordinary places and recalling the red gleam of eyes in moments of quiet or darkness. Despite the fear it inspires, there is a strange allure to Bayou de Ombres. Its beauty is haunting, the interplay of water, fog, and trees creating landscapes of impossible geometry. Light filters through the mist in golden or silver shafts during sunrise and sunset, turning the swamp into a place of eerie serenity. Yet serenity is always paired with unease, for within this beauty resides the presence of the unseen, the shadow that moves and watches, shaping the experience of anyone who enters. The bayou is a living entity, its spirit intertwined with water, mist, and memory. And the red-eyed figure remains its most enigmatic expression. The stories endure, passed down through generations and whispered among travelers. They speak not only of fear, but of respect for a place where nature and the unknown converge. The Bayou de Ombres is not merely a location, it is an encounter with a world that operates on its own rules. A place where light and shadow, sound and silence, past and present intersect. Each visitor who witnesses the figure, who feels the fog cling to their skin and the swamp shift beneath their feet, carries with them the memory of a place that defies comprehension. And remains, ultimately, unforgettable. The dark figure in the Bayou de Ombres may be a legend, a spirit, or something that exists beyond the understanding of the human mind. In the silence between heartbeats, in the shifting fog over stagnant water, and in the red gleam that cuts through mist, the bayou reminds all who enter that some places are alive with mystery. The swamp waits, ever patient, ever watchful, and those who cross its waters become part of its story, leaving with the memory of eyes that vanish when approached, yet never truly leave. Cypress Hollow Trail winds through a dense forest where towering cypress trees rise like sentinels, their gnarled branches entwining above the path. The air is thick with humidity, carrying the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. As travelers step onto the trail, an almost imperceptible shift in the atmosphere seems to follow them. Branches creak and sway even without wind, a sound that can resemble faint whispers warning those who venture too far. The water that lines sections of the trail reflects the twisted shapes of the trees above, yet it sometimes seems darker than the shadows themselves. At times, the surface shimmers as if disturbed by something unseen, small ripples forming without wind or stone. Visitors often report hearing laughter echoing off the water, soft at first, then building in clarity, though no figure is ever visible. The laughter carries an unsettling quality, like a memory half-remembered, teasing and distant, impossible to pinpoint. Walking deeper into Cypress Hollow Trail, the trail narrows and the canopy thickens, muffling the sounds of the outside world. Every footstep on the soft, moss-covered path seems amplified, echoing back from the water and tree trunks in a way that is both familiar and alien. The branches overhead groan and bend as though alive, casting intricate, shifting patterns of shadow along the ground. At moments, it feels as if the forest is breathing in rhythm with the heartbeat of each traveler, synchronizing in an unspoken understanding of presence. The trees themselves appear to watch. Visitors describe a sensation of being observed, though eyes are never visible. Shadows form at the periphery of vision, small movements that vanish when turned toward. In the mist that rises from the water and settles over the trail, these shadows can seem almost human, fleeting glimpses of figures standing silently among the trunks, dissolving as quickly as they appear. Even the air feels charged, humming subtly, carrying the faint vibration of energy that defies explanation. Some explorers have noted that familiar features of the trail change unexpectedly. Paths twist slightly, or a previously clear clearing becomes dense with undergrowth. Rocks and fallen branches shift positions as though rearranged by invisible hands. The trail plays with perception, offering both familiarity and disorientation. It becomes difficult to distinguish between what is solid and what is spectral, what is memory and what is active presence. At night, Cypress Hollow Trail takes on a more intense character. Moonlight struggles through the thick canopy, casting silvered shadows that stretch unnaturally. The creaking of branches becomes more pronounced, echoing through the darkness. The laughter over the water grows clearer, though it remains intangible. Some claim to see reflections in the water that do not correspond to any living creature, pale shapes that linger for only a heartbeat before vanishing beneath the surface. The trail is also marked by moments of sudden silence. One instant, the environment is alive with sounds. These pockets of silence are described as heavier than the surrounding air. As though the forest itself is holding its breath. Time seems to slow, stretching moments into minutiae. Each second charged with expectation and unease. Certain points along the trail are notorious for intense experiences. At bends where the water widens, travelers report seeing shadowed figures stand on the far bank, their features obscured by mist. The figures do not move, yet a palpable tension emanates from their presence. Whispered voices sometimes rise in the hush, murmuring fragments of sentences, warnings, or laughter, leaving those who hear them unsure whether they are alone or in the company of unseen watchers. Despite its unnerving qualities, Cypress Hollow Trail exerts a strange allure. Visitors often describe a magnetic pull, drawing them further along the path even as apprehension grows. The forest demands attention to detail, to the subtle changes in sound, light, and shadow. It tests perception, inviting travelers to observe the ordinary and extraordinary at once. To notice the whisper of wind as it interacts with something beyond the natural world. By dawn, the trail shifts again. Mist dissipates, sunlight penetrates the canopy, and the forest returns to an almost serene state. Shadows retreat, whispers fade, and the water calms as if nothing unusual occurred. Yet those who walk the trail carry its memory with them: the creaking branches, the laughter without source, the sensation of being observed, and the fleeting, ghostly figures glimpsed at the edge of vision. Cypress Hollow Trail remains a place suspended between the tangible and the spectral, a corridor where nature and the inexplicable intertwine, leaving a lingering impression that echoes far beyond the forest itself. Willow Creek Swamp stretches like a dark ribbon across the landscape, its twisted trees rising from murky waters. Moss drapes from branches, swaying gently even when the air is still. The ground beneath is soft and treacherous, shifting underfoot with every careful step. Shadows move between the trees, darting quickly, always remaining just beyond sight. The swamp feels alive, aware of every presence that enters its depths. Walkers moving along the narrow paths often feel the sensation of being followed. Footsteps echo softly behind them, keeping pace with their own, yet vanishing whenever they quicken their stride. The air is thick and heavy, carrying the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Mist rises from the water at night, wrapping the forest in a veil that distorts shapes and muffles sound. Every rustle and whisper of movement feels amplified, as though the swamp itself is observing. At dusk, the light fades rapidly, and shadows grow long and indistinct. The trees lean over the paths, creating tunnels of darkness that seem to stretch on endlessly. Figures are glimpsed among the trunks, dark silhouettes that vanish when approached. The feeling of being watched intensifies. And the swamp's stillness is broken only by the occasional splash of unseen movement in the water. Travelers report an eerie chill. A subtle pressure that seems to brush against the skin. Even when no one else is present. Locals speak of people who ventured too far and never returned, or who emerged at dawn trembling and silent. Some say the swamp keeps track of intruders, following them until they retreat in fear. The sensation of pursuit is real, a constant companion for anyone brave enough to enter after dark. The swamp is alive with sound and motion. Frogs call in the water, insects hum and buzz, and leaves rustle even when no wind blows. Amid these natural noises, footsteps can be heard, soft and deliberate, always following, always maintaining a measured distance. Shadows shift with the flickering moonlight, slipping between trees, sometimes forming the impression of figures that appear almost human. These glimpses vanish when confronted, leaving only the memory of having been watched. Travelers describe an atmosphere that is both mesmerizing and unsettling. The swamp seems endless, with paths looping back on themselves, confusing even the most experienced navigators. Trees arch overhead like skeletal guardians, their roots snaking through the water like ancient fingers. The thick air carries whispers, low and indistinct, as if the swamp is speaking to those who dare to enter. Every step brings the sense that the shadows are near, watching, waiting, learning the rhythm of the intruder. Some explorers attempt to move quietly, but the swamp resists concealment. Footsteps behind them quicken when they try to move softly, maintaining an invisible but precise correspondence. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves seems to announce presence to unseen observers. Even in daylight, the feeling persists, though it is subtler. Shadows linger among the trees, and the air carries an oppressive weight, as though the swamp itself is breathing. Willow Creek Swamp preserves its secrets with a patient persistence. Figures seen are never fully visible, always remaining on the edge of perception. Sounds are elusive, rising and fading without explanation. Water reflects the moon and sky, yet seems darker than it should, concealing forms beneath its surface. The mist thickens unpredictably, and paths that were clear moments ago become disorienting, guiding travelers deeper into the swamp's embrace. Visitors often recount the sensation of time stretching unnaturally. Hours can feel like minutes, and minutes feel as though they linger forever. The swamp seems to exist independently of conventional measures, a realm governed by its own rules. Shadows flit at the edge of vision, and footsteps echo with a rhythm that defies expectation. The air grows heavier, sounds sharper, and the sense of being observed more acute with every step. Even those who leave the swamp carry its impression. Memories of the shadows, the soft footsteps, and the damp, earthy air linger. The fear is tempered by fascination, an awareness of having entered a place that is ancient and sentient. Willow Creek Swamp does not easily release those who walk its paths, leaving them with the lingering sense of pursuit and the knowledge that the shadows remain, patient and vigilant, just out of reach. The swamp teaches caution and respect. It rewards awareness and punishes recklessness. Each trip along its paths is an encounter with the unknown. An immersion in an environment that is alive in ways beyond ordinary understanding. Shadows continue to dart between trees. And footsteps continue to follow those who wander. A reminder that Willow Creek Swamp watches all who enter. Preserving its secrets and maintaining its eternal, silent vigilance. Even under the calm of daylight, the swamp holds its mystery. The sounds of nature are layered with something older, something persistent. Observers feel the sensation of eyes following, of unseen shapes moving in time with their own. The swamp's depth is not measured by water or distance, but by the awareness of its presence, the subtle and constant sense that no one truly walks alone here. Willow Creek Swamp remains a place where the natural and the supernatural intertwine. Its trees, water, and mist form a labyrinth that conceals figures, preserves footsteps, and harbors a sense of life beyond perception. Travelers are drawn to it, challenged by it, and left with the impression that the shadows and sounds they experienced are not illusions, but enduring elements of the swamp itself, a living, watching, and timeless witness to all who dare to enter. Gatora's hollow path winds through dense, swampy terrain, where sunlight struggles to pierce the thick canopy above. The air is heavy with humidity and the scent of wet earth, carrying an almost tangible weight that presses against the skin. Travelers speak of the path with a quiet caution, warning that once you step onto the mud-laden trail, the journey can feel unlike any other, as if the forest itself watches and waits. Footprints appear in the soft mud, deep and distinct at first, but as one follows them, they vanish mid-step. The tracks seem deliberate, leading travelers forward only to erase themselves, leaving nothing but the suggestion of passage. The ground feels alive beneath each footfall, shifting subtly, resisting the presence of those who dare to walk its length. Some claim to glimpse shapes moving through the dense foliage, figures half seen and impossible to focus on, always just beyond the edge of perception. Guttural whispers wind through the trees, low and unplaceable. They rise and fall with the rustle of leaves, urging travelers to leave, repeating warnings that are never fully understood. The voice seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, echoing across the swamp, as if the forest itself communicates in a language older than memory. Hikers describe a chill that runs along the spine despite the stifling heat. An invisible presence guiding or warning in equal measure. The path narrows as it approaches the deeper sections of the swamp. Roots twist across the trail like serpents, and murky water pools in uneven depressions, reflecting shapes that do not belong to any living creature. Travelers have reported hearing splashes behind them, though nothing is visible, and the sound follows for minutes before fading entirely. The longer one remains, the more distorted time feels, minutes stretching into hours and shadows shifting in ways that defy logic. Trees arch overhead, their branches forming tangled canopies that block all light in patches, creating darkness that seems heavier than simple absence. Lanterns swing when no wind blows, casting erratic shadows that stretch and retreat along the path. Travelers often pause to steady themselves, only to realize that what seemed like a clear route moments before has altered subtly, twists in the trail appearing where none existed, the forest rearranging itself around them. The whispers grow louder in these sections, shifting tone from warning to coaxing, a mixture of menace and seduction. Some who have followed the trail too far report hearing guttural laughter echoing from the depths of the swamp, accompanied by the sensation of unseen eyes observing every movement. Footprints continue to appear ahead, always leading onward, always disappearing before the step can be completed, creating a disorienting rhythm of pursuit and erasure. A stillness often descends in patches along the path. In these moments, the air itself seems to thicken, the distant sounds of wildlife ceasing, as if the entire swamp holds its breath. The mud feels more like clay in these sections, resistant and unyielding, imprinting faintly and then erasing what was left behind. As if the path refuses to acknowledge the passage of outsiders. Nightfall amplifies the uncanny qualities of Gator's hollow path. Moonlight filtering through the treetops casts long, warped shadows that writhe across the trail, giving the impression of movement where none exists. Travelers report glimpsing figures standing in the water or crouched behind the thick brush, vanishing when approached, leaving only the faintest distortion in the air and ripples in the mud. Some who have walked the path too far speak of a point where the trail ends without warning. The forest opens into a clearing, seemingly ordinary yet suffused with an unsettling quiet. Footprints appear once more, but here they circle in place, endlessly repeating the last step of a journey, urging the traveler to turn back. Those who linger too long often describe a compulsion to leave immediately, as if the forest itself has made a decision about their presence, guiding them back to the safety of familiar paths. Despite its eerie reputation, Gatora's hollow path draws explorers, thrill-seekers, and those fascinated by the unknown. Every footprint, every whisper, every fleeting shadow contributes to the legend, feeding stories told long after travelers have left the swamp. The path resists explanation, a living corridor of mud, water, and forest that defies ordinary understanding, challenging anyone who dares to enter to confront the strange and the intangible. Gatora's hollow path exists in a space where the natural and the supernatural converge. Each step, each vanished footprint, each guttural whisper reminds travelers that the swamp holds secrets beyond sight and comprehension. It is a place where perception is tested, where time bends and stretches, and where the boundary between the living and the unseen is fragile and shifting. Visitors leave changed, carrying the echo of whispers and the memory of a path that refuses to be fully known, a hollow trail that lingers in the mind long after the mud has been washed from their boots. Foggy Bend Trail winds through the heart of the swamp, a narrow path swallowed by twisted trees and dense undergrowth. At night, a thick fog rolls over the water and earth, swallowing the trail in an eerie, impenetrable mist. The air is damp and heavy, filled with the scent of wet leaves and decaying vegetation. Every sound is softened, the croak of a frog, the rustle of unseen creatures, and the distant drip of water blending into a quiet, haunting symphony. Travelers who venture along Foggy Bend Trail speak of figures that appear silently within the fog. Shadowy shapes emerge from the mist, standing motionless among the cypress knees and moss-draped branches. They do not move, they do not speak, yet their presence is undeniable. It feels as though they watch every step, every movement, with an unwavering attention that is impossible to ignore. Even the most rational visitors feel the weight of unseen eyes, pressing, observing, and lingering long after the figure has vanished into the fog. The swamp itself seems to transform at night. The fog thickens and curls around every tree, twisting shapes into forms that seem alive. Light from a moon that occasionally breaks through the haze casts muted reflections on the water, illuminating figures that are only partially seen, existing on the edge of vision. These apparitions are not consistent. One moment they may be across the trail, the next they have vanished, leaving behind only the sense that something was there. Visitors report sudden chills, the air growing colder around the areas where the figures appear, as if the swamp itself is reacting to their presence. Time feels different along the trail. Minutes stretch longer than expected. And the stillness of the swamp amplifies every sound and movement. Yet in the silence, the faintest echoes of movement from the shadows feel amplified. Travelers often describe a feeling of disorientation. A sense that the trail has shifted or looped back upon itself. The fog warps perception. And in that distortion, the shadowy figures appear with more clarity. Almost as if they exist outside of time, waiting for those who wander too far. Stories about Foggy Bend Trail have circulated for generations. Some speak of travelers who disappeared entirely, leaving only footprints that fade into the mist. Others recount encounters with figures whose features are never seen, their presence felt only through movement in the fog or subtle changes in the environment. Water ripples without cause, branches sway when there is no wind, and shadows stretch in directions that defy logic. The swamp becomes a maze of perception, where the ordinary rules of space and distance seem suspended. Locals warn that the figures are not malicious, yet they are not benign either. They are watchers, guardians of the swamp, or echoes of those who once lived in its depths. Visitors report that any attempt to approach the figures results in them dissolving back into the mist, leaving no trace beyond a fleeting chill or a whisper carried on the air. The experience is profoundly personal, each encounter shaped by the observer's fears, attentiveness, and imagination. The mist serves as both veil and stage, allowing the figures to appear and vanish with deliberate mystery. The trail itself is beautiful in its own haunting way. Twisted roots rise from the earth like fingers, and moss hangs from the branches in long, green curtains. Reflections on the still water mirror the fog, creating an illusion of endless corridors that stretch into infinity. Occasionally, a firefly or a faint glimmer of light offers a momentary beacon, but it is fleeting, swallowed quickly by the heavy atmosphere. Occasionally, a firefly or a faint glimmer of light offers a momentary beacon, but it is fleeting, swallowed quickly by the heavy atmosphere. The combination of natural beauty and supernatural tension keeps travelers on edge, captivated by the trail even as it unsettles them. Encounters along Foggy Bend Trail are often described as cinematic, moments that feel almost choreographed by the swamp itself. Figures appear with careful timing, shadows elongate in the right angles, and the fog shifts to obscure or reveal as needed. The effect is immersive, a living landscape that draws the observer in while simultaneously warning them to remain cautious. The figures, the fog, and the sounds of the swamp work together to create an experience that lingers long after leaving the trail. Some who have spent extended time along the trail report subtle changes in perception. Days seem to pass unnoticed, while hours feel prolonged. The fog leaves impressions on memory, making it difficult to distinguish between what was seen and what was imagined. The shadowy figures become part of the landscape, inseparable from the swamp itself. Even in daylight, the memory of their silent presence remains, a persistent reminder of the swamp's hidden depth and mystery. Foggy Bend Trail is not simply a path through a swamp. It is an encounter with the unknown, a place where light, shadow, and mist converge to create a living theater of observation and suspense. The figures that appear are fleeting yet unforgettable, shaping the experience of those who walk the trail with both awe and trepidation. The swamp watches and waits, patient and eternal, offering glimpses of what lies just beyond the edge of perception. For those who venture into the fog, the trail becomes a story they carry with them. A reminder that some places exist between reality and mystery. And that in the silence of the swamp, one is never truly alone. Haunted Cypress Way stretches through a dense forest where ancient cypress trees rise like shadowed guardians, their branches twisting together to form a natural cathedral over the path. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and moss, carrying a chill that seeps into the bones of anyone who ventures too far. Lanterns line the trail, casting soft pools of light on the ground, yet the flames flicker without wind, as if stirred by unseen hands. Travelers often describe an immediate sense of being watched, a weight of presence that is invisible yet palpable. A weight of presence that is invisible yet palpable. Shadows shift at the edges of vision, small movements that vanish when looked at directly. Even the sound of footsteps becomes strange along Cypress Way, echoing in the stillness as though accompanied by invisible travelers keeping pace alongside. The cold is the first tangible sign of the Waya's peculiar nature. Those walking alone report sudden chills brushing against their arms and necks. Some claim to feel the soft graze of cold hands that vanish as quickly as they appear, leaving only the lingering awareness of contact. The sensation is neither threatening nor comforting, but it leaves a deep impression, a reminder that this trail is not governed by ordinary rules. The lanterns themselves seem to respond to the presence of those passing beneath them. A solitary wanderer may notice the light shift, swinging slightly though the air remains still. Shadows stretch and contract unnaturally, creating fleeting shapes that resemble human forms. At times, the trail is illuminated by what seems to be ghostly movement within the light, yet the figures vanish when approached, leaving nothing but empty space and the muted rustle of leaves. Deeper into the forest, the path narrows, hemmed in by thick cypress trunks. The darkness presses closer, and the sounds of the outside world fade entirely. Travelers often hear whispers, soft and fragmented, carried on the cold air. The voices speak in no discernible language, yet their cadence is familiar, as if repeating fragments of conversations that occurred long ago. The trail seems to remember those who have walked it before, replaying the echoes of countless footsteps and murmured words. Along the way, small clearings appear, and in these spaces the forest feels alive in a different way. Shadows gather along the edges, twisting into shapes that mimic human figures. Some travelers have described glimpsing pale faces peering from behind trees, only to blink and find the clearing empty. Water puddles reflect more than the sky above, they sometimes ripple as though disturbed by unseen bodies, hinting at movement that cannot be explained. The atmosphere grows heavier as night falls. The lanterns glow more brightly against the surrounding darkness, their light revealing details of the trail in sharp contrast. Branches sway and creak as though whispering warnings, and the cold deepens, settling over the skin and into the soul. Footsteps may echo from behind, yet when one turns, the path remains empty. Shadows lengthen and bend, forming corridors of darkness that seem to shift with each step. Some points along haunted Cypress Way are known for particularly intense experiences. At an old stone bridge crossing a narrow stream, travelers report feeling a strong pressure against their backs, as if something invisible leans close. The air around them chills dramatically, and soft tapping sounds echo from the water, though no stone or branch moves. Lanterns flicker wildly here, casting brief, irregular shadows that suggest the presence of forms just out of reach. Despite its unsettling qualities, the trail exerts a strange fascination. Many who walk it speak of a pull, an irresistible urge to continue despite the growing awareness of its unnatural nature. The path seems to challenge perception, inviting travelers to observe closely, to notice the subtle interplay of light and shadow, sound and silence, touch and absence. Each moment carries the potential for discovery or surprise, for an encounter with something beyond the ordinary world. As dawn approaches, the forest shifts again. The cold recedes, the lanterns dim. And the branches settle into stillness. Shadows retreat, and the whispering fades to nothing. Yet those who have walked haunted Cypress Way carry its memory with them. The lingering touch of cold hands, the flickering lanterns, the whispers and fleeting shapiza all remain vivid. The trail endures as a corridor between the natural and the inexplicable. A place where the unseen and the tangible intersect, leaving a mark that echoes long after the journey has ended. Whispering Marsh Trail stretches along a narrow path flanked by waterlogged grasses and tangled reeds. The air is thick with mist, rising in faint wisps from the dark, still waters. Every step sinks slightly into the soft earth, releasing the scent of damp soil and decaying leaves. The trail winds through an environment both beautiful and unsettling, where the marsh seems alive with hidden movement just beneath the surface. Walkers often feel a subtle presence as they move along the path. A faint voice calls their names, drifting across the water with a strange clarity. Turning around reveals nothing, only shadows shifting along the waterline, indistinct and elusive. The effect is disorienting, as though the marsh itself bends perception, making the ordinary feel uncanny. Mist curls around tree trunks and reeds, casting everything in a soft, unreal glow. The marsh amplifies sound in unusual ways. Distant splashes echo unnaturally, and the faint murmur of unseen creatures can be mistaken for footsteps following closely behind. Shadows appear to move independently, gliding along the edges of the water, forming shapes that vanish when approached. Even in daylight, there is a sense that the marsh observes all who pass through, cataloging movements with silent patience. Travelers describe an eerie rhythm along the trail. Every step seems to invite a response from the surroundings. A shift in the shadows or a whisper carried by the wind. Shapes in the mist flicker at the edge of vision, like figures pausing to watch before dissolving into the fog. The combination of water, mist, and silence creates an atmosphere that is simultaneously serene and tense, where the natural world blends seamlessly with the unknown. Birds call from hidden perches, their cries echoing strangely in the thick air. Frogs and insects add a constant, low hum, but beneath these ordinary sounds lie anomalies. Voices rise and fall in volume, calling names not known to the listeners, blending with the natural chorus. Shadows shift in ways that defy explanation, bending around corners and between reeds as if aware of the path being taken. Nightfall transforms the trail further. Darkness settles over the marsh, thickening the mist and swallowing familiar landmarks. The faint voices grow more pronounced, carrying with them a spectral weight that cannot be seen but is strongly felt. Reflections in the water shimmer unnaturally, sometimes showing figures where none exist. Shadows gather along the edges, elongated and exaggerated by moonlight, hinting at movement in a place otherwise still. Visitors report a peculiar sense of time along the trail. Moments stretch, sounds are delayed, and the act of walking feels slower than normal. Shadows follow in ways that are unpredictable yet persistent, sometimes disappearing only when a traveler reaches a bend or crosses a small stream. The trail seems to test endurance, patience, and attention, rewarding careful observation with fleeting glimpses of its hidden secrets. Even in silence, the marsh communicates. Water ripples with no visible cause, reeds bend as if brushed by invisible hands. And shadows twist along the surface, suggesting the presence of something unseen. Names are called gently, teasing, beckoning. And always just out of reach. Those who pause often feel the air shift, a subtle pressure that brushes against the skin. Heightening awareness of the surrounding environment. The trail's isolation amplifies perception. Every sound is magnified, every movement noticed, every whisper carries a weight that is difficult to explain. Shadows behave with intention, drifting and pausing as though considering each traveler's next step. The mist moves like a living entity, obscuring paths while revealing hints of what might be lurking just beyond. Awareness of the surroundings becomes almost instinctual, a necessary adaptation to navigate safely. People who walk the trail often emerge changed. The experience leaves an impression. A lingering awareness that the marsh is more than an environment. That it holds memory and presence. Footsteps fade behind. But the sensation of being observed remains. Shadows and whispers persist in memory. Shaping stories and warnings passed along to those who might attempt the trail themselves. Even after leaving. Names seem to echo faintly. Carried in memory like a soft murmur from the marsh itself. Whispering Marsh Trail is not merely a path through nature. It is a place where perception is challenged, where the ordinary and the extraordinary coexist in delicate balance. Shadows shift along the waterline, voices call without source, and the mist conceals more than it reveals. Every traveler is part of the environment while also being watched, becoming a participant in an ongoing rhythm that has persisted long before their arrival. The trail remains timeless, its secrets preserved by the thick water, dense reeds, and whispering winds. Shadows continue to glide along the edges of the water, always just beyond sight. And the faint voices remain, calling names that may never be known. For those who walk it, the experience is unforgettable, a journey into a landscape that is alive, sentient, and infinitely mysterious. Leaving behind only stories, memories, and the subtle echo of a presence that never fully departs. Snake-vine swamp path winds through thick, tangled marshland where sunlight barely penetrates the dense canopy above. The air is heavy with humidity, carrying the scent of damp earth and decaying vegetation. Every step sinks slightly into the soft, waterlogged ground, and the sound of footsteps seems amplified in the eerie stillness. Travelers quickly sense that this is no ordinary path. The waters along the trail ripple without wind, forming shapes that move just beneath the surface. At first, it seems like alligators or fish, but the movements are different, fluid yet deliberate, shifting in ways that defy natural explanation. Shadows glide under the water as if observing those who pass, and the swamp seems alive with a silent awareness. Visitors report a persistent sensation of being watched. The feeling is never fleeting, pressing down along the spine, tugging at the edge of perception. Turning to look reveals nothing but water and mangled roots, yet the certainty of unseen eyes remains. It is a subtle menace, an invisible presence that follows with patient patience, making each step heavier and more deliberate. The path narrows in certain sections, hemmed in by gnarled trees draped with moss that sways in a windless stillness. The water darkens here, reflecting twisted shapes that flicker in peripheral vision. Travelers describe the sensation of figures slipping beneath the water, shifting form and direction, impossible to track yet impossible to ignore. Even the smallest ripple seems purposeful, hinting at movement just beyond comprehension. Sounds behave strangely on snake-vine swamp path. Footsteps echo faintly or are swallowed entirely by the thick air. Birds cry at odd intervals, calling from directions that seem contradictory. Leaves rustle as if brushed by hands, though no breeze passes. Every noise heightens the awareness of the unseen, a chorus of subtle cues warning of the swamp's hidden life. As the path stretches deeper, the swamp seems to breathe, contracting and expanding with an almost imperceptible rhythm. Muddy banks shift underfoot, forming impressions that appear and vanish mysteriously. Pools of water reflect glimpses of shapes, distorted and elongated, as if the swamp itself manipulates perception. Travelers often pause, compelled to watch, and feel the pull of unseen eyes drawing them forward, deeper into the unknown. Nightfall transforms the path entirely. Shadows from the mangrove roots lengthen and sway independently. Lanterns flicker, their glow caught on the water in strange reflections. The shapes under the surface become more pronounced, sometimes rising toward the surface only to vanish when approached, leaving only ripples and the echo of something unspoken. Whispers are carried on the stagnant air, barely audible but unnerving. Travelers say they hear indistinct words or murmurs repeating over and over. The voice seems to come from the water, the trees, or perhaps from the space in between. It is impossible to locate, but impossible to ignore. A constant reminder of the swamp's hidden awareness. The feeling of eyes on the back persists through the night. No movement is ever visible, but the pull of curiosity draws them onward. Every step is measured, every pause heightened, and yet the pull of curiosity draws them onward. Snakevine Swamp Path is a corridor of tension, where perception and reality are intertwined. And where each visitor feels both guided and observed. Some sections of the path open into wider clearings where water glints in dim moonlight. Shapes continue to move beneath the surface, sometimes forming vague human or animal outlines, impossible to identify. The reflections of trees and sky distort unnaturally in the water, creating the impression that the swamp itself watches and reacts. The air is heavier here, saturated with unseen presence and a silence that presses like a physical weight. Travelers who linger too long report disorientation. Shapes under the water appear to circle or follow without leaving visible tracks, creating a rhythm that feels purposeful. The sensation of unseen eyes grows stronger, and whispers rise into a chorus that seems to echo every step taken on the trail. Despite the tension, many are drawn to Snakevine Swamp Path. The allure lies in its mystery, in the sense of being in a place that exists on the edge of perception and reality. Every ripple, every shadow, every whisper contributes to a narrative that cannot be fully understood, yet lingers in memory long after leaving the swamp. Snakevine Swamp Path is a place where the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Where the boundary between the visible and invisible blurs. Shapes glide beneath the water, eyes watch from unseen angles. And the swamp asserts a presence that cannot be ignored. It is a corridor of suspense and subtle terror. A living testament to the unknown, leaving each traveler marked by the quiet, persistent pulse of the hidden world around them. Darkwater Loop winds through dense woods, following the curve of a slow-moving river. The trail itself is narrow, flanked by towering trees whose branches twist together to form a thick canopy. Sunlight barely touches the forest floor during the day, and After sunset, the path is swallowed in shadows, the darkness deep and unyielding. Locals warn travelers to avoid the trail at night, speaking in hushed tones about the strange occurrences on the old wooden bridge that spans the river at the Lupa's midpoint. The bridge is unremarkable in daylight, worn with age and moss clinging to its supports. Yet as night falls, it becomes a focal point of unease. Those who cross it after sunset report a shadow appearing on the planks. A figure that moves with them, mirroring each step. It does not speak, it does not blink, yet it is unmistakably there. A perfect reflection of the traveler's movements. Even the most skeptical feel a cold pressure in the air. The surroundings amplify the sensation of being watched. The river beneath the bridge flows quietly, but its surface sometimes shimmers with light that does not belong to the moon or stars. Branches creak as if the forest itself is breathing, and the wind carries faint, unplaceable whispers. Travelers often report moments of disorientation, feeling as if the bridge stretches longer than it should, or that time slows when the shadow appears. Every instinct urges a hurried pace, yet the shadow remains, patient and unwavering, tracking every move. Witnesses describe the shadow as dark, featureless, yet disturbingly human in shape. It mimics gestures with uncanny precision, extending a hand when the traveler moves theirs, leaning forward when they do, halting when they stop. Attempts to confront it or step aside seem futile. It appears attached to the bridge, and by extension, to anyone daring enough to cross. Even when the bridge is deserted moments later, some say faint footprints appear in the wood, matching steps that no one can account for. The forest around Darkwater Loop contributes to the eerie atmosphere. Trees grow thick and close, their trunks dark against the night sky. Fog often drifts along the river, curling around roots and hanging low over the water, making it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Sounds are muffled, yet the snap of a twig or the faint rustle of leaves can trigger an immediate awareness of the shadow's presence. The trail becomes a stage, the bridge a mirror, and the traveler a participant in a ritual older than memory. Stories about Darkwater Loop have persisted for decades. Locals speak of travelers who refuse to cross the bridge, retreating into the forest. Retreating into the forest, only to find themselves disoriented and lost. Guided back only when first light breaks through the canopy. Others recount hurried crossings, hearts racing, sensing that the shadow followed them beyond the bridge itself. Lingering just beyond vision until they reach the safety of familiar paths. No two encounters are exactly alike, yet all share the same essence. The undeniable feeling of being watched, mirrored, and measured. The river beneath the bridge adds another layer of mystery. At times it seems almost alive, the water reflecting shapes that move independently of any physical source. Ripples form without wind or falling debris. And the faint sound of footsteps sometimes echoes from the surface. Synchronized with the traveler's pace. The combination of shadow and water creates an immersive experience. One that leaves an indelible impression on those who traverse the trail at night. Fear along Darkwater Loop is heightened by isolation. The nearest road lies beyond a mile of forest. And cellular signals are weak or non-existent. Once the shadow appears, the traveler is entirely on their own. Cut off from reassurance or explanation. The mind struggles to rationalize the phenomenon. And the body responds with primal instinct. Every sense sharpens, every sound and movement amplified. While the shadow remains still yet perfectly attuned. A silent companion that refuses to relent. Some visitors describe the shadow as a test, a guardian of the bridge or perhaps of the loop itself. Others feel it is a remnant of past travelers, trapped in some looping reflection, bound to the bridge and those who cross it. Whatever its origin, the shadow elicits a profound awareness of vulnerability and perception, reminding travelers that the forest and river hold secrets beyond comprehension. Even in the safety of daylight, the memory lingers, a persistent weight that colors the trail with quiet unease. Darkwater Loop is more than a path through the woods. It is a place where the ordinary rules of space and time seem suspended. Where the bridge transforms into a mirror. And where a shadow follows without deviation. Travelers learn quickly to respect its presence. To move with caution. And to acknowledge that some phenomena exist beyond explanation. The loop remains a mystery, a convergence of forest, river, and shadow. And anyone daring enough to cross at night carries with them the memory of the mirrored figure. An encounter that is as chilling as it is unforgettable. For those who walk Darkwater Loop after sunset, the experience is both immersive and humbling. Every step on the bridge is measured. Every movement mirrored. And the forest waits silently to witness each moment. The shadow, patient and constant, ensures that the path is never merely a trail, but a living, breathing entity, reflecting the traveler back to themselves. It is a story of observation, of tension, and of the quiet power of the unknown. A reminder that in some places, darkness is never truly empty. Misty bog road stretches through a lowland shrouded in perpetual fog. The trail winds between dense thickets and twisted trees, their roots rising from the damp ground like skeletal fingers. The air is thick and humid, carrying the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. Travelers stepping onto the path immediately feel a sense of stillness, as if the world has hushed itself in anticipation. The fog arrives quickly, rolling in from the surrounding wetlands without warning. Visibility diminishes almost instantly, and the familiar shapes of the trail disappear into a wall of gray. Each step feels measured, uncertain, as shadows begin to emerge from the mist. They appear at the edges of vision, twisting and bending in ways that defy natural movement. When one blinks or turns, they vanish, leaving the observer to question whether they were ever there at all. Sounds take on an eerie clarity in the fog. Each footstep echoes unnaturally, bouncing off invisible walls and creating the impression of companions that do not exist. The calls of distant birds are muffled and distorted, sometimes resembling whispers that follow travelers along the trail. The fog seems alive, responding to movement, shifting and curling around each person as though observing them. Cold spots form without reason, sudden chills that make the skin prickle. Travelers often report feeling the brush of something against their arms, a light touch that disappears as quickly as it came. The sensation is fleeting, yet the awareness of it lingers, heightening the sense that Misty Bog Road is not merely a physical space, but a threshold between the ordinary and the unknown. The trail itself seems to change underfoot. Sections of the path that appeared solid moments before become boggy and soft, while roots and branches seem to stretch and twist. The fog hides distance and direction, disorienting anyone who ventures too far from the center of the path. Shadows are the most persistent and unsettling presence along Misty Bog Road. They move independently of light, sliding across the trail with an almost deliberate intent. They gather near trees, linger at the edges of the bog, and sometimes seem to watch from the mist itself. Travelers attempting to approach these forms find only emptiness, as if the shapes were projections from the fog rather than solid beings. The deeper one ventures, the more pronounced the auditory phenomena become. Whispers drift through the air, disjointed phrases that are impossible to fully understand. Sometimes they echo the footsteps of those walking alone, creating a sensation of being followed. Occasionally, a soft rustle in the underbrush suggests movement, yet no creature or person is ever found. The fog masks distance and proximity, making it difficult to gauge the source of any sound or shadow. Small clearings along the trail offer brief relief, though they are never truly safe. Light from the sky is diffused through the mist, casting everything in pale, uniform tones. Shapes and shadows in these open spaces seem more vivid, more defined, yet just as ephemeral. Travelers often glimpse fleeting figures standing at the edges of the clearing, watching silently before dissolving into the fog. Time itself seems to warp along misty bog road. A short walk can feel like hours. And a pause of a few minutes can stretch into an eternity. The trail bends and twists unpredictably, leading travelers to landmarks they thought were behind them, or to new areas that appear suddenly from the mist. Watches and devices often lose accuracy here, further enhancing the sense that the road exists apart from the natural flow of time. Despite its unnerving qualities, Misty Bog Road exerts a subtle fascination. Those who traverse it speak of a pull, an irresistible urge to continue despite the growing unease. The trail challenges perception, inviting careful observation of the interplay between fog, shadow, and sound. Each step offers a possibility of revelation, a chance to glimpse the hidden mechanisms of the mist and the shadows that inhabit it. As dawn approaches, the fog slowly lifts, leaving behind damp earth and the faint scent of moss. Shadows retreat into the remnants of morning light, and the whispers fade into silence. Travelers emerge from the trail carrying the memory of the fog, the sudden chills, the moving shadows, and the disorienting echo of time and space. Misty Bog Road endures as a threshold between the known and the unknown, a place where the ordinary world intersects with something both enigmatic and unforgettable, leaving a lasting impression long after the journey has ended. Creaking cypress path winds through a dense forest of towering cypress trees. Their roots twist and sink into the swampy earth, creating an uneven trail, where every step sinks slightly, releasing the scent of damp soil and moss. Mist rises from the water, curling around the trunks and giving the forest a dreamlike quality. The path feels alive, as if the trees themselves are watching, waiting for those who dare to walk beneath their shadowed branches. Travelers along the path often notice branches falling without warning. No wind stirs the air, yet limbs snap and crash to the ground, startling those who pass by. The sound echoes through the forest, amplifying the sense of isolation and tension. It is as if the path is testing each visitor, a subtle warning that the environment is not entirely natural. Even the light filtering through the dense canopy seems uneven, creating shifting patterns that play tricks on the eyes. A sense of unease settles over the traveler, as they realize they are not alone in the forest. The water beside the path adds to the unease. Shadows ripple across its surface, reflecting shapes that do not exist. Many report seeing a dark silhouette kneeling by the water, motionless, yet unmistakably present. It vanishes if approached directly, leaving only ripples in the water and a lingering sense of being observed. The figure is rarely described in detail, always just a shadow, an impression rather than a concrete form. Sounds along the path are deceptive. Footsteps echo strangely, as though the forest rearranges distance and direction. Faint rustling accompanies the movement of the silhouette, though no animal or human is visible. Even the distant calls of birds and frogs seem distorted, creating an auditory landscape that heightens vigilance and unease. Every sound feels purposeful, a subtle communication from the environment itself. Mist thickens as the path winds deeper into the cypress grove. Visibility decreases, and familiar landmarks vanish behind layers of fog. The forest becomes a maze of shadows and reflections, where perception is challenged and time feels suspended. The silhouette by the water appears more frequently. In these conditions, lingering at the edges of vision and reinforcing the sense that the path is watched by unseen eyes. The forest floor is uneven and treacherous, a network of roots and waterlogged soil. Travelers must navigate carefully, yet even careful steps do not prevent the sensation of being followed. Branches snap behind, water ripples along the banks, and the kneeling figure seems to track movement with a patience that feels almost intelligent. The forest and its shadows are inseparable, creating a continuous presence that is both physical and psychological. At dusk, the path transforms further. Light fades and shadows lengthen. The mist thickens, and the forest takes on a silvery hue. The kneeling silhouette becomes more pronounced against the reflection of fading light in the water. Movement is minimal, but its presence is undeniable. Visitors describe a pull, subtle yet insistent, guiding attention toward the water and the figure, compelling observation without forcing proximity. Branches continue to fall without explanation, creating startling interruptions along the trail. Each crash punctuates the silence, reinforcing the forest's unpredictable nature. Travelers report a heightened awareness of their surroundings, noticing every detail, from the patterns in the mist to the ripple of water against submerged roots. The forest rewards alertness, yet it retains its mysteries, never revealing its full scope. Time along the creaking cypress path feels altered. Steps take longer, sounds arrive delayed, and the act of walking feels weighty. The forest imposes its rhythm on those who enter, blending sound, shadow, and motion into an experience that is immersive and unsettling. The kneeling figure remains a constant presence at the water's edge, a focal point that binds the elements of the environment together. Visitors leave with a lasting impression. The path is more than a trail through the forest. It is a place where nature and the unknown intersect. Shadows, sounds, and the kneeling figure create a narrative that cannot be fully explained, leaving travelers to reconcile what they saw with what they felt. The forest maintains its secrets, preserving them in the mist, the water, and the ever-shifting shadows that follow each step. Creaking Cypress Path is a journey into the subtle and the strange. The falling branches, the kneeling shadow, and the mirrored water combine to create a space that is at once beautiful and unnerving. Familiar yet profoundly mysterious. Those who walk the path are forever changed. The fleeting presence of the silhouette, and the memory of a trail that feels alive in ways that defy explanation. The path continues to wind through the cypress grove, silent in its observation, patient in its endurance, and persistent in its mysteries. Every traveler who walks it contributes to the living tapestry of the forest, becoming part of the story without realizing it. Where the ordinary and the extraordinary coexist, where shadows move with purpose, and where the forest whispers its secrets to those willing to listen. Shadow Creek Trail winds quietly through a dense forest where sunlight filters softly through the canopy, creating patches of light that dance across the undergrowth. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and moss, and the distant sound of flowing water adds a gentle rhythm to the otherwise still surroundings. Travelers often enter the trail unaware of the subtle strangeness that awaits along its winding path. Along the creek, the water moves with a serene yet almost purposeful flow, reflecting the muted colors of the forest. At certain points, the reflection is interrupted by figures crouched at the water's edge. They are fleeting, often glimpsed for only a moment, their forms indistinct yet unmistakably human. When approached or called to, these figures vanish as if swallowed by the air itself, leaving only ripples on the water and an unshakable sense of presence. The trail itself seems alive with subtle motion. Leaves shift when no breeze stirs, and shadows stretch unnaturally between the trees. Travelers report the sensation of being watched, a presence that moves quietly alongside them, never fully revealed. The creek reflects glimpses of movement, flickers that suggest more than mere animals or falling leaves, hinting at an unseen world layered just beyond perception. Sounds behave strangely along Shadow Creek Trail. Footsteps echo faintly and then vanish, birds call in distorted rhythms, and water ripples as though disturbed by invisible hands. Every sound seems amplified, yet impossibly distant at the same time, creating an atmosphere where the ordinary rules of space and time feel suspended. Travelers often slow their pace, compelled to listen and watch, yet unable to identify the source of these sensations. As the trail deepens into the forest, the light changes. The sun's rays filter through thicker branches, casting long, wavering shadows that twist across the path and creek. Travelers glimpse shapes crouched or standing silently beside the water, their forms outlined by the faint glow. When approached, they vanish, leaving no trace, only the echo of movement and a lingering chill along the spine. The creek's edge is lined with rocks and tangled roots, perfect hiding places for figures that appear and disappear. Some travelers speak of moments when the water itself seems to shimmer unnaturally, reflecting shapes that do not belong to anyone present. The creek becomes a mirror for something hidden, a liminal space where perception and reality intertwine, and where the forest's secrets are only partially revealed. Nightfall changes the trail completely. Shadows deepen, and the forest becomes a tapestry of dark shapes and muted colors. The figures at the water's edge are more pronounced, their fleeting movements contrasted against the stillness of the night. Sounds become sharper, the splash of water or rustle of leaves echoing through the darkness. Travelers report the sensation of being followed, though no footsteps accompany them. Every rustle and shimmer feels deliberate, a silent guide or warning that cannot be understood but cannot be ignored. The trail has a rhythm of its own. Travelers often find themselves moving in loops, retracing steps without realizing it. The creek reflects these distortions, showing ripples and shapes that seem out of sync with the world around them. Those who pause feel the presence grow stronger, as if the trail itself is conscious, aware of their movements, and subtly influencing the path they follow. Some moments on Shadow Creek Trail are quiet, almost serene. The gentle gurgle of water, the soft brush of leaves, and the occasional glimpse of a figure create an experience both beautiful and unsettling. The forest seems to breathe with the presence of unseen watchers, each step taken accompanied by the unspoken knowledge that one is not truly alone. Travelers often speak of the lingering sensation after leaving the trail. The images of crouched figures by the water, the flickering reflections, and the feeling of invisible eyes following each movement remain vivid. Shadow Creek Trail imprints itself upon memory, a place where the natural and the supernatural coexist, where the forest and creek serve as a canvas for experiences that defy ordinary explanation. Shadow Creek Trail is not dangerous in the traditional sense. But it is transformative. It challenges perception, distorts time and space, and immerses travelers in a world just beyond the ordinary. Every visitor leaves carrying the weight of that quiet presence, the subtle tension of being observed, and the memory of a place that lingers long after the forest fades from view. Bayou Phantom Walk winds through dense wetlands where cypress trees rise like sentinels from dark, stagnant waters. The ground beneath is soft and uneven, covered with fallen leaves and twisted roots that make each step deliberate. Shadows cling to every corner, stretching long and distorted under the dim glow of lanterns that line the trail. At night, the bayou transforms into a world apart, where the ordinary rules of movement and sound seem to bend. Lanterns swing gently along the path, though there is no breeze to stir them. Their light cuts through the mist, revealing glimpses of the trail ahead, yet never enough to fully illuminate the surrounding darkness. The air is thick with humidity and the scent of wet earth, and each footstep produces a soft, muffled sound that seems to be swallowed immediately by the swamp. Each footstep produces a soft, muffled sound that seems to be swallowed immediately by the swamp. In this isolation, the trail feels alive, every rustle and drip amplified, feeding the imagination with possibilities that are difficult to explain. Possibilities that are difficult to explain. Travelers often report shadowy forms darting between the trees. They are swift and fleeting, appearing and vanishing as if they exist on the edges of perception. Some describe movements that resemble a game, figures weaving in patterns that mirror each other, chasing one another across the trail, yet never colliding with anything tangible. Their presence is accompanied by a subtle tension in the air, a sensation that something unseen is observing and reacting to every step. The bayou itself seems to participate in the eerie display. Water shifts and ripples with no visible cause, and the reflection of trees appears warped, as if the surface is bending reality. Faint whispers carry across the marsh, unintelligible yet unmistakably deliberate, a chorus that rises and falls with the cadence of the unseen forms. Travelers quickly realize that the trail is not simply a path through the woods, but a stage for forces that remain largely hidden, interacting with those who dare to walk after nightfall. Travelers quickly realize that the trail is not simply a path through the woods, but a stage for forces that remain largely hidden, interacting with those who dare to walk after nightfall. The sensation of being followed or watched is nearly universal. Some travelers feel the presence close behind, a weight in the air, a chill that creeps along the neck and shoulders. Others perceive sudden movements from the corner of their vision, prompting reflexive turns only to find the path empty. Yet even in absence, the impression of these entities lingers, a persistent awareness that the bayou itself harbors watchers who exist just out of reach. Lantern light amplifies the disorientation. Shadows stretch unnaturally across the ground and the trees, sometimes moving independently of any physical object, yet reappear elsewhere along the path, creating a sense of endless pursuit. Time on the trail becomes fluid, minutes can feel like hours. And the distance covered seems inconsistent with perception. The trail transforms from a simple walk into a test of focus and composure. As the mind struggles to reconcile the sensory anomalies of the environment, local lore adds depth to the experience. The bayou has long been associated with spirits and unexplained occurrences. Stories tell of travelers who never returned, their lanterns discovered swaying alone on the trail. Some speak of a persistent laughter echoing faintly through the cypress, a sound that quickens the pulse and draws attention to areas that otherwise seem empty. The combination of natural isolation, dense vegetation, and frequent mist creates an environment where imagination and reality blur seamlessly. Many who attempt the phantom walk describe a mixture of fear and fascination. The trail demands attention, each step deliberate, each glance cautious. Even experienced hikers report an instinctive hesitation as they move past the lanterns and into shadowed areas. The bayou rewards patience and caution, but it punishes carelessness, amplifying the disquiet for those who rush or attempt to ignore the subtle cues of presence. The interplay of light and shadow, sound and silence, contributes to the trail's reputation. Lanterns swing with no wind, shadows move with a life of their own. And whispers rise from the water and trees. Every element reinforces the sense that the trail is more than a passage through the swamp, it is a space where unseen forces interact with the living. Where every movement is mirrored, and every hesitation observed. By the end of the walk, travelers are left with a profound sense of the bayou's persistent watchfulness. The shadowy figures, the swaying lanterns, and the whispering waters combine into a narrative of mystery that cannot be easily dismissed. The experience lingers long after leaving the trail, a memory that sharpens the senses and instills a deep respect for the hidden life of the swamp. Bayou Phantom Walk is more than a trail, it is a place where perception is challenged, where the ordinary transforms into the uncanny, and where the night becomes alive with presence. Those who venture here are reminded that even in stillness, the world holds unseen movements. And in darkness, the familiar becomes strange. Every footstep, every glance, every pause carries significance. And the bayou watches patiently, its secrets concealed in the swinging lantern light. And the shifting shadows that play endlessly among the cypress trees. Blackwater Hollow sits nestled between dense forests and a slow-moving river whose waters are dark and reflective. The air hangs heavy with moisture, carrying the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. Shadows stretch long along the banks, shifting in shapes that seem almost alive. Travelers who approach the hollow speak of an uneasy feeling, a subtle pressure that grows stronger the closer they come to the water's edge. Whispers rise from the surface of the river, faint at first and impossible to locate. They speak in languages no one recognizes, tones flowing and curling like the mist that clings to the trees. The words are neither welcoming nor hostile, yet they stir a deep awareness in those who hear them. Some say the hollow listens, observing with patience, revealing only fragments of sound to those who linger too long. Shadows move with deliberate intent along the banks. They stretch and crawl over roots and rocks, following footsteps without making contact. When travelers pause, the shadows freeze, sometimes reflecting distorted versions of their own forms. The hollow seems to bend perception, altering the way light and space behave. Familiar landmarks appear twisted, and the river itself appears wider or narrower depending on the observer's attention. The forest surrounding the hollow adds to its unsettling atmosphere. Branches creak and sway even without wind, and the rustle of leaves is amplified, echoing as if the woods themselves were whispering secrets. Animals are conspicuously absent, yet the presence of something unseen is palpable. A sudden splash or ripple in the water may suggest movement, yet when approached, nothing is found. Travelers speak of footprints appearing in mud and sand that vanish as quickly as they came, as if marking paths for unseen visitors. Fog often drifts across the hollow, thickening the air and muffling sound. Within it, shadows are more pronounced, gliding over the water's surface and along the banks with a fluid motion that defies natural physics. Shapes occasionally appear as if formed from the mist itself, figures standing silently or bending in strange postures before dissipating when observed too closely. The hollow uses fog like a veil, concealing its secrets while revealing them in fleeting moments. Sounds are distorted in Blackwater Hollow. The whispers intertwine with creaking branches and water lapping against roots, creating a layered symphony that unsettles the mind. Sometimes voices seem to call names, sometimes they murmur unknown words that feel urgent and deliberate. The hollow blurs the line between reality and perception, leaving travelers unsure of what they hear or imagine. Even the silence feels intentional, a pause in which the hollow asserts its presence. Time behaves strangely in the hollow. Minutes stretch or collapse depending on attention, and travelers often feel that they have walked the same path repeatedly. Minutes stretch or collapse depending on attention, and travelers often feel that they have walked the same path repeatedly. Travelers often feel that they have walked the same path repeatedly. Objects and landmarks may seem closer or farther than they are, and the Shadowsa movements do not adhere to the normal flow of light. The Shadowsa movements do not adhere to the normal flow of light. This distortion leaves a lingering sense of disorientation and caution. Those who linger near the water report feeling invisible touches. Subtle brushes of air or pressure that mimic contact. The sensation is never harmful but evokes an instinctive urgency to step away. Shadows along the banks follow this instinct, stretching and retracting as if responding to the observer's movements. The hollow seems aware of each presence, monitoring behavior and reaction. As night falls, Blackwater Hollow transforms further. The river reflects moonlight in fragmented, shifting patterns. And the shadows become more distinct, sometimes forming shapes resembling figures from distant memory. Whispers rise and fall with the gentle lapping of water, creating a rhythm that compels travelers to move quickly or retreat. The hollow's atmosphere intensifies, blending silence, shadow, and sound into an immersive experience that challenges comprehension and memory. Despite its unsettling qualities, Blackwater Hollow exerts a quiet fascination. The interplay of shadows, whispers, and fog creates a space that feels alive. A place where the ordinary and the uncanny merge seamlessly. Travelers often speak of the hollow long after leaving, recalling the moving shapes, the unknown voices, and the sensation of being observed. The hollow remains timeless, preserving its secrets, and extending a subtle invitation to those who dare to wander its edges. By dawn, the fog begins to lift, and the shadows retreat into the trees and undergrowth. The shadows retreat into the trees and undergrowth. The whispers fade into faint echoes, leaving only the sound of the river and the rustle of leaves. Travelers depart carrying the memory of Blackwater Hollow, its dark waters, shifting shadows, and voices of languages unknown. The hollow endures, an enigmatic threshold where nature, perception, and something beyond converge, leaving a lasting impression of mystery and cautious wonder. Gloom's cypress trail stretches deep into a dense forest of towering cypress trees, their trunks thick and gnarled, roots twisting over the darkened earth. The air carries a damp, earthy scent, heavy with moss and decaying leaves. Sunlight filters weakly through the dense canopy, casting fragmented patterns on the path, giving it an otherworldly, uneven glow. Every step along the trail feels deliberate, measured, as if the forest itself watches with patience. As the sun begins to set, a shadow appears. It is distinct and separate from the fading light, forming near the edges of the path. Observers notice that it mimics every movement perfectly, responding instantly to gestures, tilts of the head, or shifts in posture. Its presence is unnerving, precise, and inescapable. Even those who try to look away feel the awareness of its gaze, a silent pressure that grows heavier with each passing moment. The forest amplifies the experience. Every sound is magnified, from the rustle of leaves underfoot to the distant calls of birds retreating to their nests. The shadow moves without sound, a quiet echo of life that seems almost alive yet detached from the natural world. Trees stretch overhead, their branches forming skeletal fingers that lean toward the trail, framing the shadow in an ominous silhouette. Travelers who focus too intently on the shadow often report a creeping dizziness, a subtle vertigo that begins in the stomach and spreads outward. Panic can rise unexpectedly, a visceral reaction to the uncanny mimicry. The mind struggles to reconcile what is seen with what is known, and the forest seems to feed on this tension, the air growing colder and heavier as the sun dips lower. Mist begins to rise from the low-lying earth and tangled roots, swirling along the trail. The shadow remains clear against the fog, its movements perfectly synchronized with the observer. Even in fading light, it appears solid, three-dimensional, a presence that refuses to be ignored. The path narrows, forcing closer proximity to the dark form, amplifying unease. Shadows stretch unnaturally from nearby trees, merging briefly with the mimicking figure before retreating into the mist. The trail itself feels unpredictable. Roots jut up from the soil at odd angles. Hidden hollows conceal waterlogged sections. And fallen branches create sudden obstacles. Each step requires attention, yet attention is drawn irresistibly toward the shadow. Even experienced hikers or wanderers report an almost hypnotic pull. An involuntary focus that erodes confidence in their own senses. As twilight deepens, sounds along the trail become distorted. Leaves snapping underfoot echo like distant footsteps, and the call of an unseen animal seems closer, yet impossible to locate. The shadow remains precise, unflinching, a dark companion that is both familiar and alien. Its presence seems to distort perception, time slowing and accelerating unpredictably, leaving those walking the trail unsure how long they have been moving or how far they have come. When panic rises, the shadow reacts subtly, a tilt of its head, a pause, matching hesitation exactly. The forest itself seems to participate, the air thick with a tension that presses on shoulders and chest alike. Despite the fear it inspires, the trail maintains a grim beauty. The sun casts golden streaks through the mist, illuminating droplets of moisture clinging to branches. The shadows of the trees create intricate patterns across the path, moving with the wind, blending with the forest floor. The shadow at sunset appears almost part of this interplay, a dark accent to the natural rhythm, yet entirely separate in its intent and movement. By the time darkness settles fully over Gloom's cypress trail, the shadow recedes but does not vanish entirely. Travelers describe a lingering sense of being watched, a residual awareness of presence in the periphery of vision. The forest exhales with a quiet, measured cadence, leaving only the sound of water trickling in hidden pools and the faint rustle of leaves. The faint rustle of leaves. Gloom Cypress Trail is a journey that challenges perception and courage. The shadow at sunset serves as both guide and test, its perfect mimicry forcing reflection on the line between reality and illusion. The forest and its uncanny inhabitant leave an indelible impression, a memory of tension, fascination, and the subtle terror that comes from facing something both familiar and entirely unknowable. Those who leave the trail carry with them the echo of its presence. The feeling of eyes tracking every movement. And the knowledge that the shadow waits for the next visitor. At sunset, ready to mirror every step. Along the winding, mist-shrouded path. The swamp of lost souls stretches endlessly under a low, gray sky, its waters dark and still, reflecting the twisted silhouettes of cypress trees. Mist clings to the surface, curling in thin tendrils that hide the shallow banks and deepen the sense of isolation. Each step taken through the muddy edges feels deliberate, the ground reluctant to release the traveler, as if the swamp itself resists intrusion. Visitors often describe a chilling sensation as they move closer to the water. It begins as a subtle tug at the ankles, easily dismissed as sinking mud or tangled roots. But soon the feeling grows insistent, like invisible hands gripping lightly, urging attention, demanding acknowledgement. Those who pause find only calm, still water, yet the sensation remains. A quiet warning that this swamp does not easily forget the presence of the living. Shadows in the swamp of lost souls behave unpredictably. They rise slowly behind travelers, elongated and fluid. Sometimes visible only in the peripheral vision. When one turns, the space is empty, yet the awareness of being observed lingers. The shadows seem to move in concert with the mist, weaving between trees. Stretching across water, and retreating only when the observer is distracted. The air is heavy with the scent of decay and damp earth. Small insects hum faintly, their buzzing amplified in the quiet of the swamp. Leaves drip with condensation, and branches occasionally snap under unseen weight. Each sound is magnified, each movement exaggerated, creating a landscape where perception is unreliable, and caution is necessary. Travelers report feeling drawn deeper into the swamp, guided by instinct and subtle cues, though the path remains elusive. Water surfaces ripple in response to unseen forces. Tiny waves lap at boots, echoing like distant whispers. Occasionally, the water seems to distort the reflection of a person standing near the edge, showing shapes and angles that do not align with reality. Eyes, dark and unblinking, appear for brief moments beneath the surface before vanishing again, leaving only the echo of movement in the mind. The swamp is littered with fallen trees and tangled roots, creating natural obstacles and narrow passages. Travelers navigate carefully, often sensing shapes moving just beyond sight. Shadows merge with the trees and the fog, forming patterns that suggest figures crouched and watching silently. The feeling is pervasive, a constant awareness that every action is being observed. Night brings a deeper transformation. The mist thickens and swirls with unnatural patterns, obscuring paths and landmarks. Sounds become sharper. And the still water reflects faint glimmers that do not correspond to any light source. Those who linger too long report glimpses of figures rising from the water. Just tall enough to be recognized as human in shape, yet impossibly dark and fluid in movement. The shadows follow silently, patient and unyielding. Even in daylight, the swamp maintains a sense of otherworldly vigilance. Small disturbances in the mud, sudden ripples in the water, and inexplicable movements in the trees remind travelers that the swamp of lost souls is not empty. It is a space where the boundary between the seen and unseen is blurred, where instinct and caution are as necessary as careful footing. The swamp exerts a subtle influence over time and perception. Visitors often find themselves moving in loops, retracing steps without realizing it. Hours can pass with minimal progress, and yet the mind senses an invisible pull toward deeper reaches of the water and mist. The environment itself seems aware, guiding and observing simultaneously, demanding respect and vigilance. Those who have explored the swamp speak of a lingering unease that does not fade quickly. The sensation of hands along ankles, the fleeting presence of shadows, and the echo of ripples against unseen forces stay imprinted on memory. Even after leaving, the images of crouched forms in the mist, dark water that seems alive, and quiet observations from unseen eyes continue to haunt. A reminder of the swamp's quiet power. The swamp of lost souls is not a place of immediate danger, yet it commands attention and respect. Its atmosphere is dense and immersive, drawing travelers into a world where perception and reality merge. Every step taken is both an exploration and a test, every glance over the shoulder a reminder that the swamp watches silently. Its waters conceal history and mystery, holding a presence that is patient, unseen, and profoundly aware. Visitors leave carrying a sense of the swamp's memory, the shadows that linger, and the quiet insistence that the environment itself is alive. The swamp of lost souls remains an enigmatic realm, a place where every ripple, every shadow, and every cold brush of unseen hands forms part of a story told in silence and mist. A narrative that lingers long after the path back to solid ground has been found. Mire of Murmurs stretches deep into the heart of the Louisiana swamps, a place where the air hangs heavy with mist and the scent of wet earth rises from dark waters. The sun sets slowly, casting long shadows that stretch over twisted cypress trees and moss-draped branches. Every step taken along the narrow, muddy paths feels amplified, the sound of boots sinking into the soft ground echoing in the stillness around. A thick fog rolls in from the water, curling around tree trunks and concealing the shapes of the swamp. It is in this shifting grayness that visitors report the strange phenomena. Footsteps are heard behind them, light and deliberate, matching their pace. When they turn, nothing is there. The swamp seems empty, silent except for the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant call of a bird. The shadow figures appear without warning. They are indistinct at first, like a trick of the fog, a fleeting movement at the corner of the eye. Yet they are unmistakably humanoid in shape, gliding along the waterline or hovering near twisted roots. They never approach directly, and when confronted, they retreat silently into the mist, leaving only a chill and the sound of water lapping at the shore. Locals speak of the swamp with a mixture of respect and fear. They advise caution for those who wander near Mire of Murmurs after dark. The swamp has a rhythm, an unseen pulse, and it watches those who traverse its paths. Some say the shadows are guardians of secrets long forgotten, remnants of lives once intertwined with the waters and trees. Others suggest they are echoes of lost travelers, caught between worlds, replaying moments that never truly ended. The swamp itself seems alive in subtle ways. Branches sway though the wind is absent. Droplets fall from unseen heights. And the mud shifts with a soft squelch as if the ground breathes. At times, a thin layer of mist rises from the water in vertical columns. And the shapes of the shadow figures become clearer standing on the banks or slipping between cypress knees. They watch silently yet there is no malice, only presence. An undeniable awareness of anyone who dares venture into their domain. Explorers who have attempted to document the phenomena speak of a sense of disorientation. Trails twist in ways that defy memory, and landmarks vanish when viewed from different angles. Footsteps that seem to follow sometimes appear ahead instead of behind, and whispers drift through the fog without clear origin. The human mind strains to reconcile what it hears and sees with what it knows, creating a tension that is both thrilling and unnerving. As the night deepens, sounds change subtly. The water becomes more reflective, mirroring the pale moonlight in fragmented patterns. Shadows stretch longer, and the figures, though still elusive, begin to seem more deliberate in their movements. Some travelers report feeling a nudge or a presence at their side, though no one is there to touch them. The silence becomes heavier, more expectant, as if the swamp itself is holding its breath, waiting for something that never arrives. Despite the unnerving atmosphere, there is a strange allure to Mire of Murmurs. The reflection of twisted trees in black waters, the gentle sway of moss, and the occasional glimmer of fireflies create a dreamlike quality. And where the unexplained is accepted as part of the landscape. Some accounts describe hearing low, melodic hums rising from the water, almost like distant voices or an echo of ancient songs. Others have seen shapes move in patterns, seemingly communicating with one another, before vanishing into the mist. No one can say for certain what these figures are or what they want, but their presence is undeniable, leaving an impression that lingers long after leaving the swamp. Mire of Murmurs is a place that tests courage and perception. Every rustle of leaves, every ripple on the water, and every fleeting shadow challenges the senses. Where the ordinary and the extraordinary meet. To walk the paths of this swamp is to feel the weight of unseen eyes and the pull of mysteries that have existed for centuries. By dawn, the fog begins to lift, and the shadow figures retreat further into the depths of the swamp. Footsteps fade, and the air becomes warmer, carrying the scent of damp earth and growing plants. The water reflects the pale light of morning, calm and still, erasing the evidence of the night. Yet the memory remains, etched into the mind of those who have witnessed it, a reminder of the strange and elusive world that lies hidden in Mire of Murmurs. The swamp keeps its secrets well, sharing them only with those who dare to venture into its depths. It offers beauty, mystery, and a haunting presence that cannot be ignored. Shadow figures may vanish, footsteps may echo in silence, but the experience leaves an indelible mark. Each visitor departs with the knowledge that some places are alive in ways that challenge understanding, where the ordinary rules of the world no longer apply. Mire of Murmurs waits quietly, shrouded in mist, ready to reveal its secrets to the next curious soul. It is a realm where shadow and fog coexist, where whispers and footsteps play upon the senses. And where the boundaries between reality and the unseen blur. To enter is to be part of a story that has no beginning and no end. A continuous dance of light, darkness, and mystery that defines the essence of the haunted swamp. Fog Bend Pass stretches across jagged cliffs and a winding river, shrouded in mist that seems to rise from the water itself. Shapeless figures glide silently just above the river, their forms indistinct, blurred by the fog and darkness. Observers describe a chilling sensation the moment they appear, a weight pressing on the chest and a paralysis that makes turning away nearly impossible. The figures do not move like animals or humans, their motion fluid and otherworldly, as if the water itself carries them. Whispers accompany the figures, carried on the wind or seeming to rise from the river. Words are indistinct, yet the tone conveys warning, sorrow, and urgency. Some travelers describe the voices as echoing long-forgotten conversations, fragments of dialogue from times that never existed in memory. Others hear names spoken softly, names that stir recognition yet remain unplaceable. The landscape amplifies the pass's unsettling atmosphere. Trees along the edges sway despite the absence of wind. And branches creak as if communicating among themselves. The fog wraps everything in a veil, concealing distance and depth. Making the river seem wider, the cliffs taller, and the figures above the water even more menacing. Observers often report a sense of time distortion. Minutes stretch and contract. And paths once clear appear to shift. Leading the eye toward shadows that vanish as soon as they are focused upon. Rocks and foliage seem familiar yet altered, giving a disorienting impression that the pass is watching, adapting to each visitor's movement. Shadows do not behave naturally. They glide and merge with the fog, appearing in unexpected places. And vanishing when approached. Each drifting independently over the water. Before fading entirely. Sounds are muted yet layered. The river's flow is present but subdued, mingling with the soft whispers, the creaking of branches, and the occasional splash of unseen disturbances. Footsteps on wet ground echo in ways that seem to come from multiple directions at once. The past seems to exist in a realm where natural law bends, where perception becomes unreliable and fear intensifies without direct threat. Travelers often describe a compulsion to continue moving despite the fear. Stopping too long brings the figures closer in awareness, the fog thickening, the whispers growing more urgent. The sensation of being observed never wanes, and those who pause feel a heavy presence pressing into their minds, coaxing attention toward the river. Even the bravest hesitate, caught in the tension between curiosity and instinctive dread. At night, the figures above the water are more visible, gliding in patterns that are impossible to follow for long. Reflections in the river distort their shapes further, sometimes appearing humanoid, other times completely alien. Some observers describe the figures reaching toward them, yet no contact is made. The effect is hypnotic, freezing attention and creating a memory that lingers long after the past is left behind. Fog Bend Pass does not harm visitors directly, yet the psychological impact is profound. The combination of shapeless figures, distorted sounds, and the ever-present fog creates a sense of being suspended between worlds. Observers feel both drawn and repelled, fascinated yet terrified. Those who have visited speak of the pass with reverence and caution, often warning others that the landscape itself is alive, attuned to perception and fear. By dawn, the fog begins to lift, and the river resumes its ordinary appearance, though the shadows leave a lingering impression. Travelers carry with them the memory of motion, whispers, and the strange weight of unseen eyes. Fog Bend Pass endures, a place where perception and reality intertwine, where shapeless figures glide above the water, and where fear and curiosity coexist, leaving an indelible mark on anyone who dares to traverse its misty path. Cursed Bayou Trail winds deep into the heart of the swamp, a narrow path barely visible beneath the heavy growth of moss-draped cypress and towering hardwoods. The air is thick, damp, and carries the scent of wet earth and decaying vegetation. Each step sinks slightly into the soft, uneven ground, leaving impressions that vanish almost as soon as they are made. Shadows stretch unnaturally along the trunks of trees, elongating and twisting as if alive, reacting to the movement of those who dare to enter. Night falls quickly in the bayou, and with it comes a sense of isolation. The water, dark and still, mirrors the faint light of a distant moon, reflecting only the shapes of the trees and the occasional glimmer of eyes watching from the undergrowth. The silence is profound, broken only by the occasional rustle of unseen creatures and the subtle gurgle of water flowing through hidden channels. Every sound seems amplified, every echo carrying through the dense tangle of branches and vines. Whispers that seem to come from nowhere, soft murmurs revealing secrets they would not willingly share. These are not ordinary sounds. They speak of memories long forgotten. Of fears and regrets, of thoughts that were never voiced aloud. The whispers weave through the air, rising and falling with the rhythm of the night, drawing attention despite every attempt to ignore them. Shadows stretch and bend in ways that defy natural logic. Tree limbs sway with no wind, their silhouettes twisting into shapes that seem to observe and respond to movement along the trail. Eyes that appear and vanish at the edges of vision heighten the feeling of unease, while the air grows colder as the swamp asserts its presence. The darkness feels thick and tangible, pressing in from all sides, urging travelers to move cautiously and listen closely. Mist rises from the water, curling around roots and clinging to hanging moss, obscuring paths and creating a sense of disorientation. Shapes seem to move within the fog, fleeting forms glimpsed only for a moment before fading into the darkness. The trail becomes a labyrinth of shifting shadows and echoing sounds, each step carrying the possibility of encountering something both ancient and unknowable. The cypress trees loom like sentinels, their roots gnarled and twisted into shapes that resemble grasping hands. The further travelers go, the more the whispers intensify, filling the mind with fragments of conversation that feel eerily personal. Every name, every hesitation, every secret seems designed to unsettle, to remind visitors that the swamp holds knowledge that no one outside its borders should possess. Occasionally, the water reflects shapes that are not fully formed, human-like yet distorted, as if trapped between dimensions. These specters drift silently near the edges of the trail, merging with the fog and shadows before disappearing entirely. Their presence is fleeting but leaves a lasting impression. A reminder that the bayou is more than a natural landscape, it is a living entity with its own memory and will. Sounds change unpredictably along the path. Footsteps echo where no one walks. Distant splashes suggest movement through the water. And the rustling of leaves seems to follow, tracking every cautious advance. The whispers sometimes imitate voices familiar to travelers, creating a tension between recognition and fear. The mind struggles to distinguish reality from illusion, amplifying every heartbeat, every instinctive glance into the dark. Every heartbeat, every instinctive glance into the dark. Amplifying every heartbeat, every instinctive glance into the dark. Amplifying every heartbeat, every instinctive glance into the dark. Despite the growing sense of dread, the swamp possesses a strange, haunting beauty. Moonlight filters through hanging moss, illuminating droplets of water that cling to the bark and glint like tiny stars. The scent of wet earth is pungent yet grounding, the occasional hoot of an owl or call of a distant creature reminding visitors that life persists even in the most shadowed corners. The interplay of light and shadow creates patterns that seem almost deliberate, guiding attention while concealing the true depth of the forest beyond. As travelers press forward, the whispers, shadows, and mist merge into a singular presence that dominates perception. Time feels slowed, measured in breaths and careful steps rather than minutes. Every glance toward the waterline, every shift of shadow, is amplified. And the trail becomes a corridor of tension and wonder. A place where fear and fascination exist simultaneously. By the time the night reaches its darkest point, the cursed Bayou Trail leaves an indelible mark on those who walk it. Shadows retreat only slightly, and the whispers fade into the background but linger in memory, echoing long after travelers have returned to solid ground. The swamp holds on to its secrets, and those who wander its path carry the awareness that they have glimpsed something beyond ordinary perception, something alive within the darkness and the mist. And those who wander its path carry the awareness that they have glimpsed something beyond ordinary perception, something alive within the darkness and the mist. Cursed Bayou Trail is more than a path through a forested swamp. It is an experience that challenges the senses, bending reality and perception. The combination of shadows, whispers, and the ever-present mist creates a world that exists parallel to the one outside its borders. A reminder that some places are shaped by the unseen, and that the secrets of the swamp are kept by no one, yet known to all who dare to walk its trail. Phantom Cypress Lane stretches through a dense forest where the trees crowd close, their cypress limbs intertwining above to form a tunnel of shadows. The ground is soft with fallen needles and damp soil, muffling footsteps and giving the lane an almost unnatural silence. A chill seems to hang perpetually in the air, clinging to clothing and skin alike, as if the lane itself resists intrusion. Lanterns line the path, their warm light a fragile barrier against the growing darkness. Travelers note that the light behaves strangely, flickering unpredictably and dimming when shadows gather nearby. At times the glow vanishes entirely, leaving only the black silhouettes of the trees and the sensation of something moving just beyond sight. The fading of light feels purposeful, a warning, and those who linger often feel compelled to continue quickly, as if the lane itself demands urgency. The atmosphere is thick with anticipation. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of wind carries weight, suggesting movement that cannot be fully seen. Travelers often report a sense of being watched, a presence that mirrors their pace and subtly influences their path. Turning quickly reveals only empty space. Yet the intuition that something or something is observing remains persistent. Footsteps echo in strange patterns, some louder, some softer, as if the lane amplifies or distorts sound to disorient those who walk its length. Occasionally, the faint crunch of gravel appears beneath Oni's shoes, though the path is covered with soft soil and fallen needles. The mismatch between perception and reality heightens unease, compelling travelers to quicken their steps. The cypress trees themselves seem alive with subtle movements. Shadows flicker across trunks, bending and twisting in ways that defy logic. Dark forms appear to shift at the edge of vision, retreating when directly observed. The lane curves and twists unexpectedly, creating a sense of disorientation. Even those familiar with the forest describe the path as unpredictable, a labyrinth that changes subtly with every visit. Mist creeps along the ground in pale tendrils, wrapping around ankles and rising in faint waves. Within the mist, shapes form and dissolve, giving the impression of figures moving just out of reach. Travelers instinctively sense the shapes are not corporeal, yet the feeling of unseen proximity is powerful and convincing. Lanterns respond to the presence of shadows in unsettling ways. Some flicker weakly as if struggling to maintain illumination. Others dim abruptly without wind or obstruction. The light may flare briefly, casting long, distorted silhouettes that stretch unnaturally along the ground. These sudden changes in brightness create the illusion of movement, prompting heightened awareness and an innate need to leave before the shadows close in. The air carries faint, inexplicable sounds. A soft hiss, a whisper of breath, or a rustling that does not correspond to any visible source unsettles those walking the lane. Each sound is amplified by the surrounding trees, echoing in ways that distort distance and direction. Travelers often describe these noises as warnings, subtle cues that the lane is more than a simple forest path. Time seems to behave differently along Phantom Cypress Lane. Moments stretch, elongating each step and each breath. Travelers may feel that they have walked for hours, only to glance back and see the same familiar landmark they passed minutes ago. The sensation is disorienting and reinforces the urgency instilled by the fading lanterns and moving shadows. Some report glimpses of figures standing still beneath the trees, half hidden in darkness. These shapes vanish when approached, leaving only the impression that they had been observing the traveler closely. The combination of fleeting figures, disappearing light, and distorted time creates a psychological weight that demands attention and respect. Those who traverse the lane carry a lingering awareness long after leaving. The fading lanterns, the shifting shadows, and the subtle, persistent sounds imprint themselves on memory. Visitors speak of a compulsion to move quickly. A sense that the lane monitors their pace and intentions. The experience is both captivating and unsettling. A test of nerves and perception that cannot be ignored. Phantom Cypress Lane exists as a place where nature and the unseen intertwine. It is not violent, yet it commands vigilance. Every detail, from the behavior of the lanterns to the subtle presence of shadowed forms, serves to create an environment of tension and curiosity. Travelers learn to respect the lane, to trust instinct, and to move with care while remaining acutely aware of every flicker of light, every whisper of sound, and every subtle movement in the darkness. Those who emerge from the lane carry with them the memory of its strange rhythms and persistent presence. The fading lanterns, the shadows that shift at the edge of vision. The shadows that shift at the edge of vision, and the compulsion to leave quickly linger in the mind. Phantom Cypress Lane remains a place where the ordinary transforms into the mysterious. Where observation and perception are tested. And where every step is a journey through the thin veil between the natural and the unseen. The hidden bog path winds through a dense, forgotten swamp in the heart of the south, a place where sunlight barely reaches the ground and the air carries a perpetual dampness. Hanging moss drapes from gnarled cypress branches, swaying gently in a breeze that feels almost alive. The path is narrow and treacherous, lined with deep mud and pools of still water that reflect the dim light filtering through the canopy. Travelers who have ventured here describe a sensation of being watched. Every sound is magnified, from the squelch of boots on soft earth to the distant croak of a frog or the rustle of unseen creatures moving in the underbrush. The swamp seems to breathe with a rhythm all its own. A silent pulse that sets the heart racing and the imagination alight. The shadows are the most unsettling aspect of the hidden bog path. Some claim the shapes are humanoid, fleeting figures that appear at the edge of vision and vanish before they can be properly seen. Others have reported seeing faces emerge briefly from the surface of the water, pale and distorted, as if the swamp itself is attempting to communicate. The images vanish when focused upon, leaving only the ripples and the faint smell of wet vegetation behind. Locals speak of the path in hushed tones, warning against traveling it alone after dusk. They tell stories of travelers who felt a cold presence brush past them or of fleeting shapes that seemed to mirror their movements. Some report hearing whispers that echo over the water, soft and indecipherable, just enough to provoke unease. Despite these warnings, the path holds a strange allure, drawing those who are fascinated by the unknown or compelled by a desire to witness its secrets firsthand. The swamp is alive in subtle ways. Small fish dart beneath the murky water. Dragonflies hover in the haze. Branches arch and twist, forming natural tunnels. Every step feels both purposeful and precarious. As if the path itself tests the intentions of those who wander it. As night falls, the atmosphere changes. The fog thickens and swirls around the trunks of ancient cypress trees, reducing visibility to mere feet. The water becomes darker, reflecting only shadow and faint glimmers of moonlight. It is then that the faces are said to appear most vividly, floating just above the waterline before vanishing with a ripple. Some believe these manifestations are echoes of lives long past, spirits bound to the bog for reasons unknown. Others suggest they are tricks of the light, illusions crafted by the interplay of water and mist, yet even skeptics find the experience unnerving. Visitors report a heightened awareness when walking the hidden bog path. Sounds are sharper, scents more pronounced, and the mind seems to stretch to fill the gaps in perception. Shapes appear where none should be, shadows move with intention. And the water seems to respond to presence, forming patterns and reflections that suggest recognition. Even seasoned explorers admit to a sense of vulnerability. A reminder that the swamp is not merely a setting but a participant in the unfolding story of each traveler. The path weaves through areas where the ground rises slightly, creating small islands amidst the flooded landscape. Here, the moss hangs lower, forming natural curtains that obscure vision. Light filters through in scattered beams, illuminating water surfaces that gleam like glass. Shadows gather in these pockets, more defined yet still fleeting, retreating as the observer approaches. It is a delicate dance of perception and reality, one that leaves a lasting impression on anyone who ventures this far. Despite its eerie qualities, there is a beauty to the hidden bog path that is undeniable. The intertwining of water, moss, and tree creates a setting that is simultaneously otherworldly and serene. The sounds of wildlife, the gentle sway of foliage, and the subtle play of light and shadow evoke a sense of timelessness. The path becomes a living painting, a tableau that shifts with every movement and glance, ensuring that no two journeys are ever alike. Some who have walked the path speak of moments of profound clarity, where the whispers fade and the shadows hold still, leaving only the raw presence of the swamp. It is as if the land itself offers a glimpse of its history. A reminder that this place has existed long before human memory, and will continue to endure long after. The occasional emergence of faces from the water is seen by some as a fleeting connection to the past. A silent acknowledgement of those who have walked these paths before. By dawn, the swamp transforms once more. The mist retreating, and sunlight penetrates the canopy, revealing the true colors of the moss, water, and trees. Shadows shrink and merge with the terrain, and the faces disappear, leaving only calm reflections and soft ripples. Those who remain until morning describe a mixture of relief and lingering fascination, as if the swamp has shared a secret meant only for them. The hidden bog path holds an enduring mystery. It is a place where shadows and reflections converge, where the boundaries between the seen and unseen blur, and where water and moss become mediums for stories that refuse to be fully understood. Every visitor departs with an indelible impression, a sense of having touched something ancient and unknowable, a reminder that some paths are not just walked, but experienced. In the heart of the swamp, the moss sways gently, the water glimmers, and the shadows wait patiently for the next traveler. The hidden bog path is never truly empty, and its secrets remain just out of reach. A perpetual invitation to explore, wonder, and remember that some places exist where the ordinary and the extraordinary intersect in quiet, haunting harmony. Echo Marsh Trail winds through dense swampland where cypress trees loom overhead, their roots tangled in dark, stagnant water. Cypress trees loom overhead, their roots tangled in dark, stagnant water. Mist rises from the marsh, curling around trunks and clinging to the trail, creating an otherworldly atmosphere. The air is thick and humid, carrying the earthy scent of decay and the faint tang of algae. Travelers report whispers that seem to follow them along the trail. The voices are soft, indistinct, and shifting, echoing as if the marsh itself speaks. Sometimes the whispers mimic conversation or call out names, yet when the source is sought, no one is visible. The effect is disorienting, causing a sense that the trail stretches longer than it should, that time itself bends beneath the dense canopy. Shadows move in the corners of perception, just beyond clear sight. They are not solid, but their presence is undeniable. Observers describe them guiding movements, seeming to beckon toward narrow paths or openings in the marsh. Following the shadows often leads travelers deeper into the swamp, where the trail becomes less defined, and landmarks seem to shift. The marsh is alive in subtle ways. The water reflects dim light from the fog, creating shifting patterns that seem almost intentional. Leaves rustle despite the absence of wind, and tree branches creak in rhythmic cadence, as if the swamp itself communicates. Small animals vanish silently into the undergrowth, and distant splashes suggest movement where no creature is seen. Visitors often experience sudden disorientation. The trail appears familiar at first, but repeated turns and echoes cause confusion. Steps feel misaligned with distance traveled, and paths that seemed clear moments before appear blocked or altered. Shadows glide along the water and between the trees, never fully visible, but their presence is felt, an unspoken influence nudging travelers deeper. Whispers intensify at dusk. Voices rise and fall, sometimes urgent, sometimes mournful. Observers describe a sense of being accompanied, though no human is present. Some claim the voices share fragments of warnings or advice, yet the meaning is elusive. leaving a lingering tension in the air. The sound is layered, as if multiple sources speak at once, blending into a continuous hum that seems to surround the trail. The atmosphere is heightened by the swamp's visual distortions. Fog swirls in unpredictable ways, reflecting light in fleeting glimmers. Water surfaces ripple without cause, and the mirrored reflections occasionally display shapes or movements inconsistent with reality. Travelers report glimpsing figures that vanish when approached, leaving only disturbed reeds or ripples in the water. Travelers report glimpsing figures that vanish when approached, leaving only disturbed reeds or ripples in the water. Navigating Echo Marsh Trail requires careful attention. The trail demands respect for both the environment and the uncanny presence. Some travelers move cautiously, avoiding the beckoning shadows. Others are drawn in by curiosity, unable to resist the subtle guidance of figures in the fog. And the quiet, insistent whispers. The psychological impact is profound. Even when the trail is eventually exited, the sensation of being observed and guided lingers. Memories of movement, sound, and shadow remain vivid, creating a lasting impression of a place where perception and reality intertwine. The marsh exerts a quiet influence, shaping experience in ways that feel both natural and inexplicably otherworldly. By morning, the trail regains a sense of normalcy. Sunlight filters through the cypress branches, casting gentle light over the water. Shadows retreat and the whispers fade, yet the memory of the swamp's subtle power remains. The memory of the swamp's subtle power remains. Travelers recall the guidance of unseen figures, the disorienting fog, and the persistent feeling of being watched. Travelers recall the guidance of unseen figures, the disorienting fog, and the persistent feeling of being watched. Echo Marsh Trail endures as a place where the natural and the supernatural coexist, where shadows and whispers intertwine to create an experience unlike any other. The marsh is a living corridor, its fog, water, and twisted roots blending with the intangible presence that seems to guide, warn, and observe. Visitors leave with a heightened awareness, a reminder that even familiar landscapes can hold mysteries that escape understanding. Echo Marsh Trail is a testament to the subtle, pervasive power of the environment and the unexplained phenomena that linger quietly within it, shaping the passage of all who wander its path. Twilight Cypress Walk winds through a dense grove of ancient cypress trees, their roots sprawling across the forest floor like gnarled fingers reaching into the earth. The fading light of the sun filters through the moss-draped branches, casting long, wavering shadows that stretch across the path. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and the subtle decay of fallen leaves, carrying an atmosphere of both serenity and unease. As night approaches, shapes begin to emerge from the undergrowth. Their forms low and indistinct, almost merging with the natural contours of the trees. Observers feel the weight of unseen eyes upon them. A sensation that makes each step feel heavier and more deliberate. The shapes vanish instantly if approached, leaving only a lingering chill and the rustle of leaves disturbed by their sudden absence. The forest seems alive in ways that defy ordinary understanding. Branches sway without wind, and shadows move independently of any discernible light source. The cypress trees, ancient and silent, loom like guardians of the trail, their moss-laden limbs stretching overhead and creating a cathedral-like canopy. Every sound is magnifica: the snap of a twig, the distant croak of a frog, the drip of water from the branchesa, and each echo seems to carry a message meant only for those who walk the path at twilight. Visitors report an almost hypnotic quality to the trail. Time seems to stretch, with minutes feeling like hours. And every glance over a shoulder reveals shifting forms that retreat just beyond clear sight. The chill left behind by the vanishing shapes seems to seep into clothing and skin. A reminder that the forest is not empty and that its inhabitants, whatever they may be, are aware of every movement. Mist rises from the marshy ground, curling around the roots and clinging to the bases of trees. It obscures parts of the path, making it difficult to see more than a few steps ahead. Within this fog, the crouching shapes appear and disappear like phantoms. Their presence is felt more than seen, a combination of peripheral glimpses, sudden drops in temperature, and the subtle whisper of air shifting unnaturally. The forest exerts a subtle influence over the senses. Travelers find their hearing sharpened, catching the faintest of sounds, while vision seems to narrow, forcing attention to the immediate path yet revealing hints of movement at the edges of sight. There is a constant tension, an awareness that the shapes are observing and responding. Yet the details of their appearance remain frustratingly elusive. Paths that seem familiar at first twist unexpectedly, lined with trees that bend and lean as though observing intruders. Roots rise and fall underfoot, creating obstacles that demand careful navigation. The crouching shapes use these natural contours, remaining partially hidden yet fully aware. And their sudden vanishing reinforces the feeling that the forest itself is alive and protective of its secrets. Twilight deepens, and the sounds of the forest change. Birds and insects retreat while nocturnal creatures begin their chorus. Shadows become more pronounced, merging with the shapes along the roots. Travelers report hearing subtle rustling, almost like whispered communication, though the source remains unseen. The chill grows, carrying with it an intangible weight, as if the forest breathes around those who walk it. Despite the eerie presence, the trail possesses a haunting beauty. Beams of fading sunlight catch droplets of dew clinging to moss, creating tiny points of light that shimmer against the darkness. Patterns of light and shadow form natural artwork, intricate and fleeting, providing glimpses of serenity within the growing tension. The trail is simultaneously threatening and mesmerizing, drawing visitors deeper into its embrace even as instinct urges caution. Those who venture far along Twilight Cypress Walk often describe a profound sense of being watched, not malevolently but with intense awareness. The crouching shapes are never fully understood. They vanish when confronted, yet their impact lingers, shaping the experience and leaving a memory of unease intertwined with wonder. The forest keeps its secrets close, allowing only fleeting glimpses to those who pay careful attention. As night falls fully, the path becomes an interplay of shadow and mist, shapes and silence. The vanishing figures continue their watch from roots and low branches, ensuring that every step along the trail is marked by a sense of both caution and curiosity. Visitors leave with the memory of shapes crouching silently, of chill air brushing their skin, and of the forest alive in ways that cannot be fully comprehended. Twilight Cypress Walk is more than a simple trail. It is a living environment where perception and reality blur, where shapes observe and retreat, and where every whisper of movement carries the weight of something beyond the ordinary. Those who walk its length carry with them the knowledge that the forest is attentive, secretive, and alive, leaving an impression that endures long after the sun has fully set. Murky hollow path winds through dense, dripping woods where sunlight struggles to penetrate the thick canopy. The ground is damp and uneven, covered with fallen leaves and patches of blackened mud. Each step sinks slightly, leaving temporary impressions that vanish as quickly as they are made. The air is heavy, carrying the scent of wet earth and decaying vegetation, a mixture that seems to press against the senses. Travelers often report hearing splashes behind them, sudden and distinct, as if something moves through the stagnant pools that dot the path. Yet when they turn, the water lies undisturbed, calm and unbroken. The sound seems to follow, echoing in the damp hollows between trees, creating a sense of constant pursuit. It is subtle at first, a trickle of unease, then grows to a persistent tension, urging the walker to move faster. Shadows behave strangely along the path. In the corner of the eye, dark forms shift and stretch, rising from the mud or slipping between the trees. They vanish instantly when looked at directly, leaving only the impression that they were real moments. before. This repeated experience causes a heightened awareness of every movement, every subtle change in light and shape. The path becomes a game of perception, where nothing is quite as it seems, and every step demands caution. Mist rises from the hollow, curling around knees and ankles, concealing roots and low-hanging branches. The mist thickens near the water pools, and the splashes that seem to follow travelers are often accompanied by sudden shifts in the mist, as if something has passed unseen. Each breath feels damp and cold, a reminder of the hollow's persistent presence. Time seems altered along murky hollow path. Moments stretch unevenly, the journey taking longer than expected, yet landmarks appear familiar despite the hours spent walking. This distortion adds to the sense of being watched, of existing in a space where natural rules do not fully apply. The sounds of the forest amplify unnaturally. Drips of water, snapping twigs, and distant rustles. Faint whispers, sighs of air through branches, and soft taps that seem to follow a rhythm. These sounds weave together, creating a tapestry of unease, coaxing travelers into haste without clear reason. Shadows are not confined to corners. Sometimes they stretch across the ground, wrapping around roots and trunks, moving in ways that suggest observation. The hollow conveys presence without form, a constant reminder that the path is not empty. Even in stillness, the environment hums with unseen activity, encouraging vigilance and quick passage. The hollow conveys presence without form, a constant reminder that the path is not empty. Even in stillness, the environment hums with unseen activity, encouraging vigilance and quick passage. Pools of stagnant water reflect the twisted branches above, distorted and dark. Occasionally, shapes seem to move just beneath the surface, ripples forming where no wind or animal disturbs them. The effect is brief, almost fleeting, yet it leaves a lingering impression that the hollow is alive with observation. Each ripple, each shadow, strengthens the sense that travelers are part of an ongoing narrative in which they play an unwitting role. The forest canopy changes the light, shifting from dim gray to deeper shadow as the day progresses. Light filters through in broken patterns, highlighting leaves, mud, and the occasional glint of water. These shifting contrasts accentuate the movement of shadows, making them appear closer, larger, or more purposeful than they truly are. Every shift in illumination feels significant, another cue to remain alert. Murky Hollow Path is not a place of abrupt violence. Yet it maintains a persistent tension. The disappearing shadows, the following splashes, and the ever-present mist combine to create an environment where perception is challenged and instincts sharpened. Travelers feel simultaneously observed and unmoored, aware of every sound and every movement, yet uncertain of their true source. Emerging from the hollow leaves a lingering awareness. The echoes of splashes, the flickering shadows, and the subtle pressures of unseen presence imprint on memory. Travelers speak of the sensation of being followed even long after leaving. A feeling that the hollow retains a part of them. A place where the natural and the unseen converge. And where every step is both a passage and a test of awareness. The path remains a place of intrigue. A forest hollow where the ordinary becomes mysterious. And the senses are tested. To trust instinct. And to observe closely. Without expecting full understanding. Every shadow, every splash, and every fleeting shape is a reminder that Murky Hollow Path exists in a delicate balance between perception and reality, offering an experience that is as compelling as it is unsettling. The Bayou Nightmare Trail is a path shrouded in mist and legend, a remote stretch of swamp where the air is heavy with moisture and the scent of decay lingers like a warning. Ancient cypress trees rise from dark waters, their twisted roots forming natural bridges over hidden pools. Moss hangs in long, damp strands, swaying gently in a breeze that seems to move with intention. Locals speak of the trail in hushed tones, warning travelers that it is a place where the ordinary rules of reality no longer apply. A place where the ordinary rules of reality no longer apply. Entire parties have vanished here, leaving only abandoned equipment and echoing fears behind. Stories tell of shadow figures that circle silently, observing every movement with patient intent. They appear just beyond sight, vanishing whenever eyes are turned fully toward them, leaving only a sense of being watched. Leaving only a sense of being watched. The path itself is treacherous. Muddy banks give way underfoot, and the waters are deceptively deep. Every step must be measured, yet even the most careful traveler cannot avoid the feeling of intrusion, as if the swamp itself resents the presence of outsiders. The soundscape is equally unsettling. Frogs and insects create an irregular rhythm that almost seems like a hidden heartbeat. Occasionally, the distant splash of something unseen sends a chill through the air. Shadow figures are the defining presence along the Bayou Nightmare Trail. Witnesses describe them as humanoid shapes that move with eerie grace, circling the edges of campsites and following travelers through the fog. They are silent, their movements deliberate, yet there is a tension in the air that communicates intent without words. Some travelers have reported glimpsing faces in the shadows, hollow and distorted, emerging briefly from the mist before melting back into obscurity. Those who attempt to navigate the trail at night experience a heightened sense of vulnerability. The darkness thickens, and the mist becomes almost tangible, curling around legs and arms like living tendrils. Sounds are amplified, footsteps echoing across the water and mud, yet never revealing the source of the disturbance. Eyes strain to penetrate the gloom. But each shape seems fluid, shifting with every glance. Resisting recognition. The trail is lined with small clearings where travelers might rest, but even these are not safe. Objects left unattended are sometimes found displaced, as if nudged by invisible hands. Campfires flicker unnaturally, shadows stretching and twisting in impossible directions. Whispers are occasionally heard, soft enough to be mistaken for the wind, yet distinct enough to cause hearts to quicken. Those who have spent the night here report a restless, uneasy sleep, punctuated by dreams of figures standing silently at the edge of the clearing. Despite the danger, the Bayou Nightmare Trail draws explorers, drawn by curiosity and the desire to witness the unknown. They move slowly, careful not to disturb the fragile balance of the swamp, yet always aware that something watches from the shadows. The trail winds through dense foliage, past stagnant pools and fallen trees, each turn bringing new sensations of dread and awe. Water plays an important role in the atmosphere. Pools reflect the minimal light available, creating false images and mirages that confuse the senses. Mist drifts over the surface, occasionally revealing fleeting figures before obscuring them again. Small creatures dart through the undergrowth, their movements barely perceptible but contributing to the sense of life teeming just out of reach. Every ripple, every shadow, becomes a potential message or warning from the swamp itself. Some believe that the trail is haunted by those who vanished before, their presence lingering in the form of shadow figures that circle endlessly. Others think it is a natural phenomenon, a combination of fog, light, and human imagination. Regardless of explanation, the effect is unmistakable. Travelers describe a pervasive unease that persists even after leaving the trail. A sensation that something from the swamp has followed them, unseen but unforgotten. The Bayou Nightmare Trail also tests the mental fortitude of those who walk it. Isolation and the relentless atmosphere create a space where fears are magnified. Travelers report seeing companions in places where no one stands, hearing footsteps when the trail is empty, and glimpsing movement in peripheral vision that vanishes when confronted directly. Each experience reinforces the legend and ensures that the stories of vanished parties continue to grow. The day transforms the trail but does not entirely remove its menace. Sunlight penetrates the mist in scattered beams, illuminating the water and the intricate roots of the cypress trees. Shadows are less defined, yet shapes still linger at the periphery of vision. The swamp feels alive, observing and reacting to every movement. Even in daylight, the trail maintains its reputation, a place where the boundary between reality and perception is fluid and mutable. As night falls once more, the mist returns in full force, and the shadow figures regain their dominance. Travelers feel the oppressive weight of the swamp, a living entity that watches and waits. The faint sounds of animals, the subtle rustle of leaves, and the occasional splash of water all contribute to the hypnotic, terrifying rhythm of the trail. Every sense is heightened, every movement significant, and every glance carries the possibility of unseen observers. The Bayou Nightmare Trail remains an enigma, a place where vanished parties. A place where vanished parties and silent shadow figures define its character. It challenges those who enter, testing courage, perception, and the ability to endure uncertainty. Stories persist, shared in whispers around campfires and in small towns, each one adding to the mystique and fear surrounding this remote swamp path. Even for those who leave unscathed, the trail leaves an indelible impression. The sense of being watched, the fleeting shadows, and the whispers in the fog linger long after the swamp has receded from view. The Bayou Nightmare Trail is not just a physical location but a psychological experience. A testament to the enduring power of the unknown. And a reminder that some paths are best walked with caution and respect. The swamp waits patiently for its next visitors, the mist curling around gnarled roots and shadow figures tracing silent circuits. The stories endure, as do the disappearances, leaving behind only a mixture of fear, fascination, and the haunting knowledge that the Bayou Nightmare Trail holds secrets that may never be revealed. The swamps of Louisiana hold secrets that time cannot erase. Shadow figures roam the trails, silent and patient, waiting for the next traveler to wander too far. If you ever find yourself in these haunted places, remember that some eyes are always watching. Some whispers are never meant to be answered, and some trails are better left unexplored. Thank you for joining this chilling journey through the most haunted swamp trails in Louisiana. If these tales sent shivers down your spine, share your thoughts and let us know which trail you would dare to explore or avoid at night. Stay brave, stay cautious, and remember, some shadows never sleep.